Good evening, everyone. The time is 5:31 p.m. It is Tuesday, February 2nd, and I'm going to call the special City Council meeting to order. Would the City Secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Coach.
Here.
Ellison. Ellison. He's online. He's just muted. Flores Kale.
Here.
Rizzo.
Here.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Tobias.
All right, all members here and present. We have a quorum. Next up, executive session.
Citizen comments.
You have to read.
Citizen comments. We don't have anybody, but we still need to just like open and close it.
Sorry, hang on. Next up, citizen comments. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to please do so. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward? Seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. It's now closed. Next up, executive session. Just the paragraphs that have bullets.
Pursuant to Chapter 551 Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time and deems necessary. During this meeting, the City Council may convene into executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all of the following topics: bird scooters, city lights in Kyle Marketplace subdivision/development, Chapter 43, non-annexation agreement on property located at the intersection of Button Lane and Goforth Road, planned unit development zoning, cause number 19-1492, 1200 South Old Stagecoach Road, LLC, v. City of Kyle, Texas, pending in the 22nd Judicial District Court of Hays County, Texas. Wait, let me see. SUFC, and then deployment of security devices and critical infrastructure related to billing program.
Good evening, everyone. The time is 7:01 p.m. We need to conclude the last meeting. Sorry, motion to reconvene? It's moved and seconded. There was no action taken during executive session. There will be no action taken now. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, so we're going to adjourn now. Good evening, everyone. The time is still 7:01 p.m. It is Tuesday, February 2nd, and I'm going to call this regularly scheduled City Council meeting to order. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, we're going to go ahead and do that. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the City Secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Coach.
Here.
Ellison,
Present.
Flores Kale,
Here.
Rizzo,
Present.
Bradshaw,
Here.
Tobias.
Here.
7 members present. We have a quorum. Next up, approval of the minutes.
Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to go ahead and approve the minutes for January 19th and the meeting January 19th as well. Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Tobias, seconded by Councilmember Ellison, that we approve the meeting minutes for January 19th, both special and regular. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a citizen comments form and submit it to either myself or the city secretary. First up, I have Mr. Hammond from the MVets.
Which is right down the road, there by the post office. I was also on a committee to design the Heroes Park. And I would like to publicly at this point thank Councilman Ellison for leading us in that effort. And I know it'll be built here hopefully in the near future. I am the spokesman here to represent AMVETS, our members, and we're here to support the renaming of Rebel Drive to Veteran Drive. And just because we're veterans, that's not the only reason why we want it to be called Veteran Drive. The primary reason is right now, there's no significant indication that Kyle has for veterans. And this would be a step in the right direction, I believe. Would also recognize 2 other groups that most people don't know who they are. That's the Blue Star Mothers and the Gold Star Mothers. They're very active in the veteran community. The Blue Stars has a son or daughter that is currently serving. A Gold Star, they had a son or a daughter that gave their life for our freedom. If the council approves the renaming of Rebel Drive to Veteran Drive, I would like to offer the AMVET facility for the dedication program, regardless of whenever it is, but I would like to see it either occur on Memorial Day, 4th of July, or Veterans Day. I don't know how long it'll take to get all the legal stuff done, but that would be an ideal time. In addition to that, offering our facility, and we will help wherever we need to if you need us to do something during the dedication. Kyle has a Adopt a Street program, which we will adopt Veteran Drive and take care of it if you approve the renaming. Also, I just wanted to pass out, let you know that starting Monday, February the 8th, we will have set up COVID testing at our facility, and it'll be 7 days a week. And then on March 28th, we will have a blood drive. We're doing it at our location because we're pretty well centralized in the middle of all the housing areas, and we thought it would be convenient for the citizens of Kyle. I thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to your decision.
Thank you, Commander Hammond. Next up, Mr. Peter Parcher.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight. Just 2 things I really wanted to talk about. I'll get the question out of the way first. And that would be, I've been following the rezoning that has been happening here, being voted in, et cetera. And just in my mind, I'm trying to put together a pattern that would show what you want everything, the whole city to look like once, in 5, 10 years. And I just don't see a pattern. So I'm wondering if y'all have a plan, a master plan, comprehensive plan, whatever you want to call it. I'm just wondering about that because I don't see the vision right now myself. Number two, I'm also here on behalf of the Citizens, Kyle Citizens Veterans Parade group. And I would have come to ask if one of these fine people here would please put a parade for next year. We're going to run one. We'd like to do it with the city. How that works out, that would, we'd have to work that out. But we would really like to do it for the city, for our veterans in this city of Kyle. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, we have Mr. Matt Green who submitted written testimony to council. Carla Seeley Green, registering a position on item number 16, but not testifying. And then Commander Hammond. Okay, those are the three. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close citizen comments. All right, next up, appointments. Consider nominations and take possible action for reappointment to the Kyle Parks and Recreation Board to fill unexpired terms. Considering Lana Nicholson, Ms. Espinosa.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mariana Espinosa, Parks and Recreation Director for the record. At this time, I am going to turn it over to our Park Board Chair, Amanda Stark.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Mariana stated, my name is Amanda Stark. I'm the Chair of the Parks and Recreation Board. Tonight, it's my pleasure to recommend Lana Nicholson for reappointment to the Parks Board to serve another 2-year term. Lana is extremely appreciated on the Parks Board, and she has provided invaluable feedback on topics such as the programs and events that the department hosts, as well as providing inputs on the trails. I know that Lana will continue to do a great job serving on the Parks Board, especially as we continue to work on creating more trails and other park improvements. So with that being said, I strongly recommend Lana Nicholson for reappointment to the City of Kyle Parks and Recreation Board. Lana is also on the call, so if anyone has any questions, I'm sure she'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Amanda. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Mayor.
Councilor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we do have Ms. Nicholson, just had a question for you. What do you enjoy most about serving on our Parks and Rec Board?
I think it's creating new parks. I think that is just incredible that we're growing so well.
Fantastic. And how long have you lived here?
I've lived here 15 years. I'm a native Austinite who worked out of state, came back, and chose to live in Kyle instead of Austin. And Kyle actually reminds me of Austin many, many decades ago.
Always like hearing when people say they choose to live in Kyle over our sister cities. So you won brownie points with me on that, at least. So I want to preference with my next question. It won't be for Ms. Nicholson. This will be more for either Ms. Stark or Ms. Espinosa. Did we have any other applicants that applied for the position, the open position?
Councilmember Ellison, Lana's position is actually just a reappointment. We have currently two positions on the panel right now that we just completed interviews for. And those two appointments will be on the next city council agenda. But this one is just a reappointment today.
Yes, ma'am, I'm aware. And so just same with reappointments on any of the boards, it's the same, right? Where the board decides if they will reappoint or not, or if they'll make that position vacant.
So the reappointment is at the recommendation of our park board chair.
So in theory, there could be, it could be still an open position, right?
In theory, yes. If it was not a recommendation to reappoint Ms. Nicholson, it could be still an open position.
Gotcha. So the whole reason I'm asking is because I know we had over a dozen applicants for P&Z, and I'm just kind of curious about what we were looking like on other boards. And that's really what behind the line of my question is for.
Yes, for the park board applications that we did receive, we called in 7 and got responses by 4. So we were able to interview 4 of the 7.
Now you're getting at what I'm trying to figure out. So y'all had 7 applicants for the 2 open positions with the Parks Board and gave 4 interviews.
Right. We called 7 and only got responses by 4. And so we actually interviewed 4.
So y'all were intending on interviewing all 7 if y'all had gotten responses?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all willing to do that. I know 7 still is a large number of persons to volunteer for our boards and commissions. I've said this, I'm in my 4th year on council now, and I've been saying this for a while, that it is a good problem to have so many people applying for our volunteer boards and commissions. I remember back in my day, I'll say, 6 years ago when I was on planning and zoning, you couldn't find people to be on boards and commissions. You almost couldn't pay them. So I think it's really awesome that our city is getting involved, residents are getting involved. I love hearing what Ms. Nicholson said about what she loves about being on the Parks and Recs board. And I just wanted that to be publicly stated so our residents hear that and see that our boards and commissions do have an impact on what goes on in our city. And I'm happy to hear about such an enthusiastic person. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve Ms. Nicholson for reappointment.
Second that.
All right, it's been motioned by Councilmember Ellison, seconded by Councilmember Coach that we approve Lana Nicholson to the Parks Board for reappointment. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Mayor, I'd just like to thank Ms. Nichols for her continued service to the city. Thank you for stepping up and being a volunteer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Rizzo. Anyone else? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 5 in the presentations. It's Black History Month Proclamation. Councilor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had the honor now of writing my 4th Black History Month proclamation for the city. As I stated last month with the Martin Luther King Jr. proclamation, it can be a challenge doing these every year and trying to keep them fresh and just something new about it. And so what I've decided with my theme for my proclamations that I'm doing this year is origin stories. So talking about how these holidays or events or significant periods in our history came about. But I think a lot of times that can get lost when you have future generations and not really understanding why certain things are being celebrated. It's just, hey, this is what we do. But I think the importance of knowing why things started and also how difficult they were to come about is important just as well. So if you bear with me, it is a bit longer, but it's because I wanted to talk about a little bit about the history of it and how it started. And thank you for your patience and bearing with me. City of Kyle City Council Proclamation. Whereas in 1915, it started as an idea for ways to celebrate African American achievements. In 1924, a celebration that eventually got renamed to Negro Achievement Week began, and the outreach was significant. But the desire for a greater impact also persisted. We are going back, quote, we are going back to that beautiful history, and it is going to inspire us to greater achievements, end quote. By February 1926, the statement of Harvard-trained historian Dr. Carter G. Woodson, along with that idea he and other prominent African-American figures had, would then become Negro History Week. Dr. Woodson chose February for reasons of continuing what was already familiar to many. Since 1865, Black communities have celebrated fallen President Abraham Lincoln's birthday, and then by the late 1890s, former slave and prominent abolitionist activist Frederick Douglass's birthday, both occurring in February. This showed his true effort to extend the study of Black history, not to create a new tradition. Finally, in 1976, this celebration was expanded to include the entire month of February. And today, Black History Month garners support throughout the country as people of all ethnic and social backgrounds discuss the African American experience. And whereas the city of Kyle takes pride in its African American heritage, which throughout our nation's history has shown examples of both subtle and forthright threads in the fabric that is the United States of America. This can also be seen in Kyle within its entire scale of history, from the enslaved people at its founding to the courageous freedmen who settled in the area. And from the early traders representing business in Kyle to those who have served and represented this growing community in various capacities, including publicly elected offices. And whereas the city of Kyle encourages the preservation of our African American history and applauds the efforts of groups such as the Hayes County Historical Commission, as well as individuals such as Ollie Giles, Winton Porterfield, and Gene Bagwell in helping preserve, restore, and maintain Kyle's former African American cemetery, now known as the Kyle Family Pioneer Cemetery, and being recognized as an official historic Texas cemetery. And whereas the city of Kyle joins in the unified endeavor of its community members around Hayes County in paying homage to those that have helped carry on the resolute efforts and a continual reminder of the achievements and sacrifices by African American men and women who have contributed to the advancements of human civilization. And whereas this year's theme, the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity, chosen each year by the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the same group founded in part by Dr. Woodson in 1915, offers a reminder to the spread of family members across the states, nations, and continents, along with the impact and continued discussion over how to represent its meaning from a historical perspective. Therefore, be it proclaimed by the city of Kyle that the month of February 2021 should be celebrated as Black History Month, in appreciation of the many achievements of Kyle's African American community and those across this nation and its history. Signed and entered this second day of February 2021. So once again, it's actually an even more detailed origin story of Black History Month and what Dr. Carter G. Woodson and his colleagues at the time wanted to present. In many cases, because Black history is actually just American history that is not being told. And so at the time, those scholars wanted to bring light that history. And for generations that were coming up and generations of that were existing in past would not be forgotten about those significant parts of our American history. And so I want to thank a number of different people real quick, if I may. I know I saw Miss Vanessa Westbrook down in the gallery. I appreciate her help with working with our communications team on providing the Facebook and social media posts that you see about the different Black history facts that are being provided on a daily basis. I want to thank Miss Laura McMahon, who has been working with our Kyle Public Library, as well as Ms. Westbrook, and helping the program of African-American writers and stories promoted at our Kyle Public Library, as well as the storytelling time. We had Ms. Westbrook read a book about our current Black History Month fact from today. And so I encourage folks to visit our Kyle Public Library Facebook page to see those great stories being told. And countless others as well. We have our program coming up this Friday evening. Encourage everyone to tune in from 7 to 8:30. We'll be here. It'll be hybrid, so some of us will be here at City Hall. Some of the panelists will be virtual. Some of you all might remember the Dialogue for Peace and Progress from last June 19th. This is the second edition with a focus on Black History Month. We will have a great panel that will be discussing a number of different items to do with Black History Month, as well as the theme that I spoke about here, in general, family, which everybody has a family and everybody has a perspective of what that means to them. And so I want to thank those that are participating, including the mayor. Will be participating that night, and we look forward to that event. And I just want to thank again my colleagues for always being supportive of me as I pursue these proclamations and endeavors. They are important to our city, and our community wants to see these, and understandably so. And so I always want to thank my colleagues for helping with your support and encouragement for me doing this. And I'll release the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. Any further comments or discussions? Councilmember Rizzo.
I just want to thank Councilmember Ellison for bringing his proclamation forward. Beautiful job in crafting it. Thank you. I love that you touched on a little bit of history here in Kyle, the Pioneer Cemetery. I was honored to be there during its dedication. That was a beautiful dedication presented by Kate Johnston and the Historical Society, Hayes County Historical Society. And just thank you for bringing some of that history of Kyle here up front. And thank you for the proclamation, Councilmember Ellison. Great job.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much. Councilor Ellison, did you want to come down for photos or anything like that? I don't know really what the protocol is on photos. I'm trying to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know either. I know we did one with the county, which that was something I felt remiss that I missed. So this year, with great help from a number of different folks, we were actually able to get a countywide Black History Month proclamation in almost every city in the county as well. A majority of them doing them tonight along with us. And it's the first time to our knowledge that's ever been done. And so I want to applaud those that helped that come to fruition. And I want to applaud the various different jurisdictions for stepping up to the plate and doing that as well. I don't know. I don't know the proper protocol for doing that either. Certainly, if there's anyone in the gallery that would be up for taking a picture, maybe we could do something, but I won't take that over and make that decision for anybody. But I just wanted to say, though, I appreciate that the effort that has been done. It is taking an army and a group of great volunteers that are dedicated to help this be a county-wide effort as well this year.
Okay. I'm looking around. I don't really see anyone angling for photos. We'll probably just wait on the photos until we get some more vaccines in our arms. How's that sound? All right. The next item is actually, there were 3 proclamations. Only 2 made the agenda, but I have the other one here and reps here. So I'm just going to power through with our Hayes CTE proclamation. I apologize for not getting it listed on the agenda. But as you all know, we partner with Hayes CTE in a variety of ways. Hayes CTE has been a very much a exponentially growing part of the educational process at the school district. Something that I've supported and promoted, and I know just generally speaking we have. And this is also CTE month. And so I wanted to do a presentation and then invite Ms. Susie up to introduce her team. So with that, whereas about 1.4 million Texas secondary students are enrolled in one or more career and technical education courses in 1,200 school districts throughout the state, and over 3,205 Hayes CISD students are enrolled in CTE. 3,205? And whereas career and technical education has offered students the opportunity to gain the academic, technical, and employability skills necessary for true career readiness, and whereas CTE instills in their members the values, knowledge, and skills to be patriotic citizens prepared to engage as effective leaders fully, and whereas career and technical education provides students with career exploration opportunities early in their educational experiences, and whereas ensuring that employers have access to a qualified workforce is a crucial step in ensuring productivity among the business and industry communities, as well as continued American economic growth and global competitiveness. Now, therefore, I, Travis Mitchell, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Kyle, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2021 as Career and Technical Education Month, and do hereby call upon all citizens to become familiar with the outstanding curriculum delivered by exceptional career and technical education teachers in this community and in communities across the state, and to support and participate in these programs to enhance individual skills and productivity. Ms. Susie, the director, I feel like the founder of Hayes CTE, do you want to come say something? Should be. There you go.
Thank y'all very much for recognizing CTE Month. We really do have a great partnership with the city. Every year y'all have hosted interns for us. Mayor Mitchell has been on our advisory board now for 7 or 8 years. I am very blessed to work in a community that does support CTE. And after listening to Councilman Ellison with his proclamation and how he updated it so well this year, I was thinking, I need to update ours because I think it's maybe been the same proclamation now for a couple of years.
New numbers.
I think we're up to over 6,000 students now in our district in CTE programs because we've really expanded into our middle schools now also. So we have a lot of kids in CTE, so that's pretty amazing, right? So I'll get you new numbers before next year. But I do want to introduce also our coordinators that are with us. Avery Barrera is our instructional coordinator, so she does more of the work with the teachers on curriculum. And our curriculum is very diverse, from cosmetology to culinary arts to animal science and law enforcement. Like, we're kind of all over the place. So she is the one that helps all of our teachers with curriculum, and many of them come from the world of business, not from the world of education, and so she helps them to learn the ways of education. And then we have Ryan Merritt is our new workforce development coordinator. So he is the one that sets up all of our student internships, our teacher externships, our senior hiring day, our career day, all kind of things. So he'll be working with a lot of the businesses in our area. So thank y'all for having us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Susie.
Uh-huh.
Anybody have any comments? All right, thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item number 6, Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. We have a couple representatives. I think Michelle and Sandy Gonzalez are also here. I'm going to read this one out. Whereas 1 in 3 adolescents is a victim in physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner, and whereas the effects of dating violence impact youth in all communities and cuts across economic, racial, gender, and societal barriers, and whereas respectful, supportive, and nonviolent relationships are key to safety, health, and academic success, and whereas by providing teens and young adults with education about healthy relationships and relationship skills, and by changing attitudes that support violence, we recognize that dating violence can be prevented. And whereas family, friends, teachers, coaches, faith leaders, community members, and other important people in young people's lives have the power to influence youth in positive ways. And whereas last year, the Hayes Caldwell Women's Center provided 235 dating violence prevention and healthy relationships presentations to 5,889 teens and young adults, and whereas we must work together to raise awareness and promote healthy dating relationships with activities and conversations about mutually respectful and nonviolent relationships in our homes, schools, and communities. Now, therefore, I, Travis Mitchell, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of Kyle, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2021 as Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month for teens and young adults, and do hereby call upon the citizens of Kyle to work together to raise awareness and prevent dating violence in our community and beyond. Sandy, Michelle, do y'all have anything y'all would like to add to this? Thank you for bringing this forward.
No, but I just want to say thank you, Mayor Mitchell and the council for recognizing February as Dating Violence Awareness Month. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything to add?
Same. I would definitely like to thank the city and the council for supporting us and helping us to help the rest of the community.
Thank you. Councilor Ellison.
Yes, thank you. First, real quick, really appreciate the previous proclamation as well and the attendance tonight. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sandy, and good to see you, Michelle, as well. This proclamation, I'm so thankful the mayor always brings this forward every February as well. We've come to learn over the years how much this impacts so many different people in our community, and we're not aware of it. And so that's what awareness is about, is reminding us of these things and how this can impact maybe not ourselves, but ones close to us, and the different variables that there are with that. It's not just, physical abuse or something like that. There are many different aspects to it, and that is all a part of the awareness. So I want to thank those for coming tonight and helping us to not let that be forgotten, and certainly help it be a reminder for us to look out for each other. And so thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Sandy, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? All right, next up, agenda item number 7, presentation and possible direction regarding renaming of West RM 150. Ms. Westbrook.
Good evening, City Councilman and Mayor. I'm Vanessa Westbrook. You've heard my name a couple of times tonight. Thank you for having me here. I'm here on behalf of the chair of the West RM 150 Naming Committee. And there is a presentation you can see on the screen. I'm going to go through a couple of slides. I'm not going to take a long time, but I do want to just give you a little bit of information as we bring forth the recommendation that you asked us to give you in regards to this particular topic. You can go to slide number 5. All right. So basically, we had a purpose that was set before us in regards to having this task of coming up with a name with RM 150. And our task was very clear to us for the most part. We were to come up with a name. And that is exactly what we bring before you tonight. We had meeting requirements for our 15-member committee that assembled together. One of the things we really tried to do was be extremely transparent with what we were doing. Therefore, we set up, the staff set up a series of informative information that went out to let the public know what we were doing. We were collecting names from citizens, our neighbors all over the city of Kyle, and we were coming together so that we could take a look at these names that were being submitted, as well as to come up with the task, which was to find that one name. So with that in mind, we really appreciate Samantha and Steve's help. They were just, thank you so much. We really needed them to help us along the way as we proceeded with our task. Go to slide 6. There were 15 members on our committee, and I think some of them are here in the audience. Would you guys stand just real quick? A couple of them? Yep, there's Priscilla, and there's Wilma, and there's Karen. Okay, so a couple of them came tonight, and thank you guys for coming tonight. So you can see we had a nice group there as we proceeded to have the discussion about where we were going to go with the task at hand. Slide number 7. So we scheduled a series of meetings. They weren't every week. They were designed so that the committee could meet and then have time to go and talk with neighbors at homeowners associations, in the grocery store, at church, whatever the case could be. They were able to go in and have lots of discussions about this idea of renaming RM 150. I myself was an election judge, and I used that opportunity as people were standing in line to say, so what do you think? So lots of information from a lot of people. What we ended up doing was we came together with this list of names, and we were able to go through each name, and we had a process for that. Go to slide number 8 for me, please. as we were talking about the names, two things that we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about the history of the current name that we no longer will use and the area. And one question that came up was, well, why are we changing the name in the first place? And so we actually had staff give us some history and information as to why this name was going to be changed, about the new road coming in and those kinds of things, kind of put everybody all on the same page. So with that in mind, I'm going to go to the next slide. Thank you. We had a total of 72 names that came in from various forms, whether they were emails, people we talked to on the street. We submitted them into a portal, and we tried to give a rationale of why each of those names were being submitted. And then once those names were placed before us, we actually spent a little bit of time, because our meetings normally last about an hour, but when it came time to looking at names, they were a little bit longer than that. We kept everybody here pretty late in the evening, and I do appreciate everybody's time in regards to that. So 17 names were already names of streets in the city, so they were eliminated. Then we had another 47 names that the committee looked at in regards to a rationale as to why those specific names were given, and after discussion, they were not voted to go any further for various reasons. We also had 8 names that we ended up with as we had the discussion as to what's the best name to be able to give a nice character to this particular street that we were looking at. The names came down to the final 3. And those final 3 names, you can go to the next slide, that came up was Veterans Drive, Albert Taylor Street, and Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Not Boulevard, it says Boulevard, but it's Drive. And so the committee voted, and the street that had the most votes was Veterans Drive, and you've already heard from one of our citizens who is very pleased, his organization is very pleased with that. So what we bring before you is a recommendation to name RM 150 to Veterans Drive. Now, let me also say that those other 2 streets that you see up on the screen were a bit of discussion, because these 3 names were very tough on us. Number 1, Albert Taylor Street, who was an African-American businessman in the early 1900s. As a matter of fact, his building where he had his tailor shop is still up on Front Street. And unfortunately, he died of pneumonia during the time of influenza, about 1918, 2 weeks before he was shipping out to World War I. So we thought that was an excellent name. And then, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, or Drive, which represents what we're trying to focus on as a unification of our communities. And, of course, Martin Luther King certainly does ring to that particular name. So the committee, after we had some discussion, thought that we'd also like to give you a recommendation, a second one, that if new streets are going to be named as we're growing and getting to be this great place that we are, that these 2 names be put in the queue, and if streets happen to come up and need names, that these 2 names could possibly be utilized for one street and then for another street. We'll let you use your discretion for that. So with that, I'm going to end my very short presentation and say thank you so much. It was an experience. I think the biggest experience was getting all of the comments from citizens from everywhere. And now we know what y'all go through. And we did appreciate it, though, because I got to meet a lot of people in the, 11, 12 years that I've been here, more folks and that kind of thing. And people seeing me on the street saying, "Hey, Vanessa." And I'm like, "Hi." And didn't know why they knew me, but then I said, "Oh, that's right, they saw us on TV," which was the other thing, too, is that all our meetings were televised, and so people could sit in and listen from their homes at what we were doing. And then, of course, after the meeting was over, all of our emails just blew up and text messages with people giving us more information that we needed to know. So anyway, there's our recommendation, and we thank you for this task at hand. And now we'll give you your task of making a decision about our recommendation of Veterans Drive, and then, of course, the other 2 that we bring before you. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Westbrook. Appreciate that very much. I'm sure many of us will have some comments and feedback and questions off the top. Just, you are correct. The video recording was great because it allowed for us to watch from the luxury of our home in a safe manner, and it was some must-see TV at various times. A lot of challenging, complicated issues to go through. I'm going to save my comments. The reason I listed this as a presentation of possible direction was to give us the opportunity just to give thanks and feedback to the group for all their hard work. That was 15 possible meetings. Didn't end up being that many, but I think at one point it was 15 meetings y'all were going to have, and just to go through this one item, and that was a Herculean effort. So with that, I'll turn over the floor. Does anybody have any feedback from Ms. Westbrook? Councilman Rizzo.
Yeah, Ms. Westbrook, I just want to thank you and your committee for the work and the hours. It's great to hear that you were out in the community getting feedback, and that's really what we wanted. When we went down this process, we wanted this to be a community-led effort, and thanks to those that stepped up, the committee and yourself, it really was. So I want to thank you for all the hard work that you put into this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Bradshaw.
Ms. Westbrook and the rest of the committee and everyone watching, I just want to say thank you so much for stepping up for this task. I can imagine coming off of the heels of everything. It was not easy, and so I just want to thank you for your time and your effort, and I especially appreciate the community outreach that you did. I think that's very important, and I think everyone was able to feel heard and feel like they had and they could submit their input, so I really appreciate that. I also really love your idea of queuing the other two names that you had up. I think that's a really good, we need to get a list going of potential road names, and I would love to see those two at the top.
Thank you. Councilor Ellison.
Thank you. I want to second what my colleagues have said, and certainly my gratitude to a 15-person committee or somewhere around that, for 15 residents to come together that never knew each other and work through this task. That certainly is, as the mayor said, a Herculean effort and a challenge that even we don't deal with in many cases. I want to thank you for your work as chair. I thought you did a great job speaking to that of a 15-person committee. But I want to thank the entire group. Thank you all for coming tonight, as well as those that are watching. It was an eclectic group. We had folks that, it was their first foray into volunteering or doing something with the city, and they wanted to learn and volunteer their time to do that. We had former judges, we had former council members, you had various different groups of folks that made up this committee. And so I thought that was really a unique thing as well. And I agree, it was very interesting to watch. As the mayor said, must-see TV. It was kind of like our weekly show that we had. And it was great to always understand the thought process and how you all come to where you ultimately were from 72 names. And so I certainly second what Councilmember Bradshaw said about the commitment to the outreach. That was important. And you all took your task with extreme sincerity. And I thank you all for that.
Councilor Tobias.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As we know the history behind this committee and why it was formed, I just wanted to, again, thank the committee for what they've done. I know the REM committee was made up by local residents that were selected through the Kyle application process. Y'all had regular meetings. You did a great job researching the history and roots of our city. The committee worked very diligently, showed great professionalism. And I just want to say to everyone on this committee, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and your talent for accomplishing this. And Chairperson Vanessa Westbrook, I wanted to thank you personally for your contribution and your time and efforts in leading this committee and giving council the recommendation of the name to consider on that. I also want to thank the city council as well for your support for this committee as well. I wish I could be there personally to thank everybody, but with my occupation, I want to be able to take the necessary COVID precautions. But I also want to thank the city staff, manager, Scott Sellers, the IT department, and for their assistance, and of course, Amanda Armbruster and her team. I was watching the meetings, and you guys did a great job helping this committee. So I wanted to say thank you to everybody. We really appreciate it.
Councilmember Flores Cal.
I know everybody did not think I was not going to talk, but I waited patiently because I'm going to be 100% honest. I watched a few of the videos, and upon the recommendation of Mr. Ellison, I watched the Dialogue for Peace and Progress, which was 3 hours and 8 minutes. And I am not going to lie, I'm a little starstruck by you. I told Dex, yes, ma'am. I said, I have got to meet her. Like, she has this energy. And what you brought to the group was really great. The group in itself was really educated, exciting, but you as a leader had that energy. And I was like, that is what I want to get to know. I want to pick your brain. You talked about being a statistician and then a historian, and I was like, I got to meet her. So I waited till the end to say, because, it's like if my husband once upon a time met Ozzie Smith, and he didn't say more than 2 words to him. He was starstruck. And so I kind of felt that way too. You and your group of people were amazing. And I want to say thank you. And I want to tell thank you to Mr. Ellison for recommending. I watched that video, which I should have already done. And it's good to know that I'll have the opportunity to watch you guys again on Friday. So and once again, I just want to say thank you to you and to everybody that was on the committee. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Westbrook. Anyone else?
I don't know what I could say that hasn't already been said. I echo all the comments. What stood out to me most watching the meetings was the amount of time that you guys focused on historical relevance for it. There was one of the committee members in particular who kept referencing books that are housed under lock and key in our library and that you can only look at while you're at the library itself. I really do appreciate him doing that and bringing that to the group because I do think it is really important that the names that we pick have historical significance. And it's one of the areas that I believe that we as a city tend to overlook or not acknowledge as much. So thank you, Ms. Westbrook, for your leadership for that committee, and thank you to all the committee members. I think you guys did an outstanding job. It was not an easy task. So it is very much appreciated and understood by this council what you guys had to go through in that endeavor. So thank you.
All right, thank you. So the item is currently listed for presentation only. If we would like to give council or staff feedback to bring back an ordinance to change the name immediately, we can. We can also have a discussion like what Commander Hammond was saying about doing it at a certain particular time. I just didn't want to put pressure on us to have to make that exact decision now. But Scott, do you have any thoughts as far as the time frame for implementation of a new street name?
Until the ordinance, the street will continue as West RM 150.
So it's, and this might be a question for Steve as well. It's currently West RM 150 and we have some time. Do we want to wait and try to make the road name change concurrent with a particular date or milestone as was recommended? I'm not sure what those exact dates are. I know there are 3 of them. I think there are 3 different possibilities. So it was May 31st, July 4th, and November 11th. Is there anybody have a preference on wanting to pick one of those or coordinating with one of those? We would have to have it all set up in time to make the road name switch if we were going to do it ceremonially. Or if we want to have a discussion about the name itself and whether or not we want to go with that name, we can bring it back and have that full, robust discussion at another time as well, if there's desire there.
I have no desire to bring it back.
Don't want to debate the merits of those 2 road names, those 3 road names?
Debate Mrs. Westbrook.
I think this was something that, as a council, we decided to take the recommendation of the committee, and I think we need to stick to it. So they put in a lot of hard work, and I think it's just the appreciation of what they brought forward. I think we should honor that.
Councilor Ellison. First, does anyone have any more questions for Ms. Westbrook? Thank you, Ms. Westbrook.
Okay,
Appreciate
I'm
it
gonna sit
very
and
much.
listen. Thank you.
Yes. Councilor Ellison.
So I'll be the one to bring it up then. I do have some discussion about the particular name. I think Veterans is great. I would like to take some ambiguity out of it and add, and I know the committee talked about it, and about U.S. veterans or something along those lines, making it very particular to our country, because there are veterans of all countries, and certainly it can be argued that rebels were soldiers as well. That's what they were for the Confederacy. And so if Ms. Westbrook wanted to make a comment about that from the discussion, or if that would be one of the things that personally I would be in favor for, simply adding U.S. in front of veterans with the recommendation.
Does anybody have any thoughts to that?
Councilmember Flores Kale. I never once thought about that. And so I want to thank Mr. Ellison for bringing that up, because as we strive to make these changes, we have to be cautious and aware of what changes we're making. So although I like Veterans Drive, I think Mr. Ellison has a valid explanation of why he would like the U.S. put in front of it.
Councilor Rizzo.
Yeah, I think it's a great recommendation, but I would caution us in going down that road, because we do have veterans that are from other countries that serve here in the United States military that have given a lot for this country. And by classifying just the U.S., we might do a disservice to those veterans. I know there's young men and women from Mexico that come in and serve, and I just wouldn't want to do an injustice to them. Thank you.
Steve, you got something to add?
I'm Steve Clemens. I'm the GIS and addressing coordinator for the city. And I also approve street names. So I was one of the staff liaisons for this committee. And there are some standards that 911 likes to see for street names, and abbreviations are not recommended at all. So if you wanted to go that route, you could spell out United States or American or something like that, but an abbreviation of US would not be allowed.
There are lots of names with abbreviations of streets that I can think of. I could probably think of a dozen just sitting here. But so you're saying it's not recommended, but
like it. There's very few with like periods as abbreviations in the name. So,
okay.
Just mine.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Additional thoughts? Mayor Pro Tem Coach.
I'm kind of in the middle. I see Councilmember Flores Kale's point when she said that she has never thought of that before, and Councilmember Rizzo's point that there are different kinds of veterans that we can honor. I feel like the U.S., in my mind, the entire time that I've watched the meetings and heard about it, it's implied in the name veterans, because we are in the United States. So I don't think it's necessary. I think that the veterans name is really strong. I think that it is a great honor for our city to do this. I think that they've worked very hard to come up with a name that they could all agree on, and it was a 15-member committee. So I support their recommendation as veterans. And then just as a side note, as someone, we all use GPS, I can just see Siri or something butchering that, and then the next thing you're always turning on Us Veterans Drive. So
Us Weekly.
I'm in support of their recommendation for the veterans name.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? That's where I'm at as well. So given it some thought here. You know, that we use veterans and the term veterans ubiquitously in our culture and our country. Veterans is a universal word, as far as I can tell, that that our country uses to lift up and honor those who have served in our country. And so we have memorials with words veterans in them. We have streets with veterans. We call it the VFW, not the US VFW, and you can go on down the list. I mean, but Nazis were veterans. Every country's, every past, good, bad wars and things along those lines. So this is veterans is kind of universally the phrase and word, I think, that has been bipartisan, biracial. I mean, it has really set that standard in our country. So from my point of view, while I understand the desire to take ambiguity out, I think it might actually provide more of a connotation for having the discussion when in reality what we're trying to do is take that away and make it be something that is not charged in that way. And I think the word veterans is definitely not charged. So I'm with the Mayor Pro Tem and the others who've said that as well. So that would be my desire, would be to bring it back as the committee has recommended. Is there any additional thoughts on that?
Councilmember Flores Kale. I just looked it up, did a quick Google search, and it looks like Georgia and Dallas both have just like a veterans drive. So if that helps anybody make a decision, it's clearly done. I understand Mr. Ellison's reservation, and I respect that. But it looks like there are several places from Wisconsin, Texas, and Georgia that already have these streets with that name. So if it makes you feel a little better.
Well, it is an ironic conversation to have because it's a conversation about where is the line and what is the line, because there's Rebel Drives in neighboring towns, and we just removed Rebel Drive here, and it's a vague term to represent a veteran. It's just, where do you draw the line? And I think in possibly this is where they're the inverse. Rebel means a veteran and has a very direct connotation for something that we're not wanting to stand for as a community. And it is primarily about that. And veteran you can always throw anything to it, but by and large, it has a connotation of, support, and so I think just based on, they're kind of the inverse of each other. So the line is somewhere between those two. And we'll never be able to fully get to the bottom of it. But as long as we keep having the discussions, I think that's where we progress as a society. Being willing to examine ourselves is not easily done, and so this was tough. I think that the committee had a hard time as well, because you're having to make those decisions. You're having to take votes between street names. I can't imagine. I know that's got to be difficult. So, Councilor Ellison, do you have anything you want to add or additional thoughts you want to bring to your suggestion?
I think I'm home on this one, so I don't think it's going to change. But other than that, I think it's fantastic that we are acknowledging our service members with this road name.
Well, my recommendation is to, I've been trying to get this thing behind us as a city for about a year now, so Memorial Day sounds good for me. I know that's going to coincide with Heroes Memorial Park and the groundbreaking. We're going to be right in that same time frame, so I think if y'all are okay with it, I would like to just try to schedule, because we have to consider, I'm going to have to work with staff to figure out first, second readings and the ordering of signs and all that stuff. To make sure we have it for that particular time. But so I don't know exactly what agenda to put it on, because it has to be noticed first and second reading. But we'll try to coincide that with Memorial Day if that's what everyone wants to do, if that works for the group. I'm seeing nods up here and down there.
I think that would be a nice honor, Mayor, to.
I'm good with it, sir.
Yeah.
I'm good with it.
Also, Commander Hammond and AMVETS, I want to say thank you for your tireless support of this, but also your commitment to adopt what is to become Veterans Drive and to keep that street nice. We struggle with trash, so it's a wonderful win-win for us there. So I'm very honored and thank you for making that pledge and that commitment. I was noting just not too long ago how much our AMVETS and our VFW, not only did they serve the country overseas, but those particular organizations come back and keep serving. It's just, it's incredible. And so thank you for that. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm being a little long-winded right now. Is there anything else anyone wants to add? Do you need anything else at this point?
No, sir.
We're good?
We're good.
Okay. All right, so we'll be bringing it back by ordinance for Veterans Drive to coincide with some kind of ceremony for Memorial Day. And that coordination will happen in the coming month or two. All right, that was a good one. Let's take a 10-minute break. Is that okay? We'll do a 10-minute break after that one. So we will reconvene at about 12 after. Go ahead and get started. Motion to reconvene.
Second.
All right, it's moved and seconded. Next up is agenda item number 8, presentation by San Marcos Animal Shelter on the Trap, Neuter, and Release program. Ms. Krupinsky, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know if I was waiting for an introduction. DerryAnn Krupinsky, Assistant Director of Neighborhood Enhancement with the City of San Marcos. It's my understanding you need me to share my screen tonight, is that correct?
Yes, please, if you have a presentation.
Okay, great. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're happy to be here tonight to discuss with you the plans for the animal shelter's quest in achieving and sustaining a 90% live outcome rate. I'll run you a little bit through the history, introduce some staff that I have on here with me tonight, and then entertain any questions that you have. So the background kind of began in 2018 with some attention on our live outcome rate. So that's the animals coming into the shelter, the ones that get out alive. So we have, over time, decreased the amount that we euthanize and increased the amount that we put into homes, send out to rescue organizations, and even return to field when appropriate. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but there was a resolution by our city council to formulate a 5-year implementation plan. And so we met with our animal welfare partners, community members, and our government partners in 2019 to come up with this plan. So there were a several pronged approach to coming up with this. It involved some public input. We dissected a lot of the issues and came up with something that we thought would work for not just San Marcos, but for all of Hays County, since we are a regional model here with our animal shelter. So let's see, I basically covered this. You can find all of the details of the plan on our City of San Marcos website under the Animal Services Division, and the link is there directly for you if you need it. So let me get all these up on the screen. So what we ended up with when we did the plan were 12 objectives, kind of our guiding steps for achieving and sustaining that 90% live outcome rate. And so some of these are kind of the low-hanging fruit. Maybe they don't cost a lot of money, but nonetheless important. And so when we ended up with number 5, our CAT solutions, it's a little bit of a sticking point for us, and it's something that we realized right off the bat. So the practice of TNR, SNR, whatever you want to call it, involves trapping cats that are not social, meaning, you know, we can't bring them into the shelter, sterilize, vaccinate, treat, and then put them into homes. They're not going to work as a pet, right? So the other recommended method would be to spay, neuter, vaccinate, and put them back where they are. In theory, what this does is ultimately reduce over time the cat population in specific colonies. We'll get into some more detail, and that's why I have staff with me. They have experience directly with TNR and other jurisdictions. They have, you know, their own experience and more of the strategy involved in this. I'm simplifying it just to get this presentation started, but we can go into the detail, and then we're happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry. Okay, I thought somebody was trying to get my attention there.
No, you're fine.
Okay, thank you. So when we dissect Objective 5 a little bit more, there are some things regarding cat solutions that we can do already. One of them is the barn cat program. So we basically turn these cats into outdoor working cats. There is a little bit of a different process to acclimate them to their new environment. So we do reach out and promote to property owners, you know, not somebody that lives in a subdivision with small lots, but somebody that has some property for, you know, cats to work, if you will, by controlling snake and rat populations, critters like that. So part of it is also being strategic about the TNR program and how we go about it. So, you know, we have to analyze data and really focus on the more problematic areas kind of one at a time. Public awareness surrounding TNR is going to be huge. You know, of course, we were just giving a presentation at Buda City Council, and, you know, it doesn't make sense to pick up a cat on complaint, spay, neuter, vaccinate, and put it back just to have the complainant call you again, right? So public awareness and education would be one of the starting points for this if we enact this. And it's also something that's low cost, high impact, right? Because explaining to people that typically when you sterilize a cat, you see less problem behaviors and such, okay? So the reason we're talking to the different government partners about this is because we are a regional model, like I said. So we are the intake shelter for all of Hays County. You all contribute to our partnership, you pay into it. You know, we work as a team. And so while we don't expect all of our policies and ordinances to be completely in alignment, we are striving to get people on the same page as much as possible. So where we can align policies and ordinances, we'd like to. The sticking point with TNR is that it's not allowed by ordinance in all of our areas, right? So there are laws against free roaming cats, cats that have to be leashed. And then sometimes where there are no ordinances, it defaults to state law, which basically says you can't release a cat out once it's in your possession. So we're having these conversations with our government partners. One, because as we went through the implementation plan process and got to this cat topic, I actually brought together all of our government partners, everybody from field level all the way up to city managers and policymakers such as yourselves, to hear the different angles about TNR. the good, the bad, the ugly. I think somebody in our last presentation said, yeah, there's always two sides, to the TNR debate. There's really about 3, 4, or 5 sides. So I think the point is to get all of this out in the open, have those discussions. This presentation is meant to, if you all decide to do it, to kickstart your process for gaining public input and putting it out to the community so that you all can decide what's best for your area specifically. Okay. We talked about that presentation. There are some success stories. You also will see plenty that, feel like TNR doesn't work. And we can dive into some of that a little bit more. So in a minute here, I'll introduce my staff, but like I said, the next steps would kind of be to decide how each entity wants to handle this. It would be my desire as we try to turn this ship in achieving and sustaining more live outcomes at the shelter that we all move together in the same direction at the same time. All of our government partners, so Hays County, Kyle and Buda, have committed to helping us with this implementation plan and not just achieving, but also sustaining, putting into effect some long-term solutions for our animal issues in Hays County. So again, we need to address ordinance revisions, community outreach, and then securing funding for this if it's the route we decide to go. So I have on with me Christy Bandu. She is our animal shelter supervisor. She comes from jurisdictions that have done TNR programs, and she can talk specifically about analyzing specific areas and really how to go about doing a TNR program. We also have Sophia Frawler. She's our program coordinator over foster and volunteers, but she also has experience out of Houston with the TNR program. So Christy, do you want to start first?
Sure. Hi, good evening, everybody, Mayor and Council. Hope everybody's had a good Tuesday. So I guess what I bring to the conversation is just the experience and the background that I have in implementing TNR programs kind of from the ground up in other jurisdictions. And I'll spare you the boring details of cat behavior and why it works, unless you guys have specific questions going into that. But basically what we were able to do at the last shelter I was at was go in and target our areas where we have the highest populations of cats first. And we did that very strategically, and we used several formulas for that. Some of that includes looking at your demographics, your income levels, how many animals are likely to be unsterilized in certain areas. And part of that is tribal knowledge that you get from your animal control officers who are out there on the streets, and they know where these cats are and they know where they're getting these calls. We have data that we collect at the shelter where we're taking in, the majority of these cats from. So you kind of compound all of that data, you find your target areas, and that's where you want to start is your highest pocket of animals. In the course of 2 years at the last shelter I was at, we were able to target those areas first and then kind of trickle out to the areas that were least impacted by cats. And we saw an overall 90% reduction in cat intakes at the shelter. It costs far more for us to take in these cats, house them long-term, find them homes, continued medical care at the shelter. Cats are notorious for getting sick at the shelter. They're fragile. They don't do well with stress. You have disease outbreaks, things that end up costing exponentially more than it does to just spay neuter these cats that are healthy, that are probably already being cared for. They're healthy body weight. There's nothing wrong with them. People in the community are feeding these guys. It costs a lot less in the long run to keep those guys where they're at, kind of shut off the faucet, if you will, as far as the breeding goes. You're shutting off the faucet and then you're cleaning up the mess after that, because you're going to have a population reduction gradually over time. You don't have cats continually breeding and filling that void that you're making by removing cats. So if anybody has any specific questions on that, I'm happy to go into more detail. I don't want to keep you guys here. It looks like y'all already are going to have a long night.
Thank you. Yes. So how would you keep track of these cats? if you release them? I'm sorry, I'm not a part of the group, so I don't know the answer to that question. To know
There
if you
is
see a cat,
several-
whether or not it has been released or not, whether it needs to be spayed and neutered. They're tagged?
So the universal symbol for a cat that is fixed is we clip the tip of the left ear. So, and that's done while they're under anesthesia, while we're doing the spay neuter. So if we see a cat that has an ear tip, we know that that cat is already fixed and we don't need to catch it again and put it through that. So they're also microchipped. So that's kind of our second barrier. If they come in and maybe that ear tip kind of healed funny, we don't know if it's a torn ear or an ear tip, we can scan that for a microchip and then get that information that way.
Are you looking for specific feedback from this group on this program? Are you wanting us to tell you whether or not we support it, the concept, or whether or not you want us to keep moving?
I guess I can answer from previous conversations. Now, keep in mind it was a different council starting from two years ago when we went through this process and heard the various conversations or the viewpoints of the opposing organizations and all of that. So it was the desire by each governing body or the representatives that were serving on our implementation plan committee to have us present to your governing body in public and give you all the opportunity to kick off the public talks about it. I guess we leave it up to you. We just know that right now we can't take a cat in from your area and TNR into your, back to your jurisdiction. So
Because currently that's a policy that's not allowed. So currently, if you catch a wild cat, you euthanize the cat, and that's all on the. Is that correct? If it's a unsocialized or unsocializable cat, that cat is euthanized.
We try really hard not to euthanize cats. So that's where the barn cat program came about, where cats are not going to do well if you pick them up and just drop them off somewhere else. But there is a way to acclimate them. And so that's why, people that have any amount of property, if they're willing to adopt these barn cats, take them in, care for them, let them work outside. That's pretty much our solution for feral cats right now.
But you're saying that that solution's not viable, or it is continuing to be viable? I'm trying to understand what the ask is. Am I missing this? Am I missing something? So is not sustainable the course that we're on because you can't take any more?
Right. Well, so the idea that Hays County is doing nothing but growing, right? So if we do nothing, cats will continue to populate. People may even move into the area and bring their cats. Yeah, we don't have a solution. So as we met and went through this process with the implementation plan, we identified TNR and the cat issue as one that needed to be addressed. So as we had our various meetings, it was decided that each jurisdiction, so Kyle, Buda, Hays County, that are players in this regional shelter partnership, would invite us to present on this TNR issue, and then basically leave it up to each governing board or body how they want to proceed.
I would add as well, animal control has been around since the 1950s. We've been catching cats and catching dogs since the 1950s, and our populations are just continuing to increase out there. So the model of catching and warehousing animals doesn't seem to be giving us a result. And year after year, we're spending taxpayer dollars to do the same thing that's not getting us a result. So this is just a different way to look at things. And if we can overall reduce the cat population, then we're overall reducing our collective spending, what we're having to spend to house these animals year after year.
Scott, go ahead. What were you saying?
Mayor, Brianna Brecker's on on here, and I think she has
Yeah.
some thoughts you want to state.
Brianna, do you want to add to the conversation? Officer Brecker?
Yeah, sure. Brianna Brecker, Animal Control Officer for the record. Can you guys hear me?
Brianna, can you somehow speak louder?
Is that better?
That's good enough. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So our current ordinance does not cover us for TNR. We do require that any free roaming cats be vaccinated, currently vaccinated. They wear their collar tags and be registered with the city. So under our current ordinance, we do not allow for that. And the majority of our nuisance complaints and the reason we remove them from the area is because people are having issues with them using the bathroom in their yard, scratching up vehicles, bothering their indoor cats, things like that.
So where's the conflict? The conflict is that when we catch a feral cat, our ordinance tells us we have to get rid of it, but the animal shelter and their policy says that they're going to try to keep it alive, but they can't keep any more cats, and we have to keep giving there, but our ordinance doesn't allow for us to fund or produce more capacity. So is that the conflict that we're trying to resolve here? We either need to fix our ordinance and give more resources to pursue this outcome, or we just need to recognize that this is inevitable and that euthanizing these animals might be possible. Or am I missing something? Councilor Florescale, yeah, sorry.
I have two concerns. I think this is a great opportunity if we are wanting to control our pet population. However, while I was doing some research, I did realize that Texas has a penal code number 42.092, cruelty to animal non-livestock animals, and it defines abandoning. And so I was wondering how you guys got around that code.
Our city ordinance only allows it.
This is a state law though, so how does your city ordinance get around a state law?
So with TNR programs, the animals are being returned to the exact location where they were found. We're not taking these animals and exporting them to some other place where they have no food and water source. If we're picking up animals that are unhealthy, then maybe that animal has a problem and is not going to be eligible for TNR release. But if the animal's coming in healthy and well fed, it's a pretty good indication that somebody in that area is taking care of that animal. And that's typically the thought process behind TNR. It's not really covered under the state law abandonment because we're not taking these animals somewhere else and leaving them in the woods. We're taking them back to their home.
Well, the definition is technically abandon includes abandoning an animal in the person's custody without making reasonable arrangements for an assumption of custody by another person. So what I don't want to do as a city is violate any state code. So although I can understand. Go ahead.
Absolutely understand where you're coming from with it, and this is a concern that a lot of cities have. What a lot of cities have implemented is if you have a really robust volunteer program, you can assign caretakers to colonies, and it's a really good opportunity to get your public involved with the solution to the problems that we face at the shelter, and you get the community to come in and take care of these animals and to step up. You know, ultimately this is a problem that has been created by certain people in the community, and so the community is the solution to the problem, and this allows them a chance to help when there's people taking care of these cats out there.
I certainly agree with that and the idea of people taking care of their animals. However, since that's not set up, that's kind of a hopeful thing. What is set up is you're taking it back to a place that may or may not have someone there to release this cat back to. So again, I would just ask, how do you guys get around the idea of, or the definition of abandonment?
I would suggest that it could easily be set up. Somebody is calling to report these cats. So these somebodies who we're calling to report these cats are potentially the people that we need to be educating and reaching out to be a part of the solution with us. You know, so there is a good opportunity there to, we have a person who's called in this cat. This person might be the person that can be a colony caretaker. So it's just going to require, and as DerryAnn said in the beginning, it's going to require groundwork in the beginning. This isn't something that you just launch with and go and you're just fixing cats and that's all there is to it. It's very multifaceted. You know, we've got to lay that groundwork so that we have these things in place. And that's what we're asking.
Yeah, and I wouldn't claim or even try to give you all legal advice. I think in any municipality, your legal department would be involved in any ordinance development and make sure that you're compliant in all aspects.
Okay, so did I hear it correct when you guys said, you stated that there'll be some rabies vaccination as well? So, okay, so there's vaccines. I know we have a Kyle City Ordinance 5-229, which is also coincides with the state. And it says that there has to be a booster at 1 or 3 years. So how do you guys know which cats, like how long it's been since they've had their initial rabies?
So when the
sorry, go ahead.
When the cats go back out, I mean, we would microchip them, and you know, all of their medical records would be attached to that. So that would be part of a caretaker's responsibility, would be to retrap and vaccinate. But I'll be honest with you, that's one of the debates around this issue, and you know, critics of TNR will tell you that that's pretty rare that that's actually going to happen. I mean, on the bright side, they're getting some vaccine when otherwise they wouldn't, you know, if you never trap cats and treat them. So that's one of the opposing issues for sure.
Okay, I just want to thank both of you guys. I really appreciate you guys trying to look into the cats. I think we all kind of know how cats are not quite as respected as dogs. And it does make me sad to see all these cats out and about. And it's unfortunate that the alternative to a feral cat would have to be euthanization. I just hope that we can come up with a, you know, a solid solution.
I have a real quick question, if you don't mind. What would be like an overall ballpark figure cost for all the vaccines and the microchipping for each cat that y'all catch, that the citizens would have to eventually pay?
I think the best way to describe it is, you know, with the presentation we did for BUTA, you know, they wanted to know a cost for a TNR program. And so, I mean, the best way to describe it would be to look at, you know, total cost that each entity is contributing over the years based on all of the solutions we're implementing. But the other thing to look at too is the cost differential between, you know, us housing and caring for these cats for who knows how long versus just fixing them and putting them out. So, I mean, if you think about, we pay probably $60, $65 on average for every sterilization surgery. Any tests and vaccines, maybe another $15, $20, something like that. So definitely cheaper than keeping them on site. But it is something to consider, and that would be part of our data gathering is, you know, identifying which colonies and how many cats we plan on doing per year and per area and things like that. We haven't started that process. Obviously, we don't want to put the cart before the horse, but that would be something to consider in order to be strategic about that.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other thoughts? Is this a program that we want to pursue? Do we want to pursue coming up with the funds and just as a general strategy for reducing pet population humanely? Is this something that we want to continue to pursue? I'm sure that the shelter would love to know kind of our intents and our thoughts there.
Mayor, I would like to wait to make a decision on that until we have started our budget workshops and we have a better understanding of what 2022 will look like.
Councilor Rizzo.
I'd like to just add to that as well. I think maybe even putting a committee together of council members or even staff to work further with the animal shelter, just to bring back the recommendation that we need to pursue this if we decided to go with this. But I'd like all the information and make sure we have cost, we have the programming, and a clear path.
I kind of agree with that. This is Councilman Tobias. That way we could have some numbers to go on as far as the amount of calls the animal control are receiving, what would be the cost, and also the time, how much time it's taken for them to be responding. And if it's a habitual owner that has these cats out, I mean, I'm a firm believer of being a responsible pet owner from the beginning, whether you have cats or dogs. I don't have either or. I have a parakeet. That's about as far as I'm going to go. Because they cheep all day, but still.
I hope you're responsible.
I think it just comes down to that. It just comes down to being a responsible pet owner in this city. And we could probably reduce some of these problems that we're having to place on these animal control officers. I do want to reflect what Councilor Reason says and what Ms. Bradshaw was saying about we should look at the numbers first and maybe look at it as, if we can do this, maybe look at it for next year's if we need to.
Well, are we talking about house cats that got loose? Or are we talking about feral cats born in the wild, most likely? I mean, because I think a lot of the cats that you see around, I mean, they don't, it's a whole biosphere out there. It's a whole ecosystem that exists apart from people. So in that world, if we're talking about true unsocialized wild cats, I think of that in a different way. I don't think of that as someone's lost pet that we're trying to take care of. So, you know, everyone's probably going to not like anything I'm about to say, but it's just fine. I'm going to say it because it is the truth of how I feel. But I mean, we pay money in the county right now to go out and trap and put down feral hogs because of their nuisance. And feral cats it's a very similar thing. Wild animals that produce lots of problems for lots of people. And violence in particular. They can attack other cats, domestic cats, get in backyards, steal things, and like raccoons, same thing. You know, we always manage those populations, armadillos, possums. So if it's so I'm not a fan of the program. I'll just say that. So if it was I'm in support of trying to reduce the amount of unnecessary euthanasias. We have a viable, adoptable animal that's ready to go into a home, making sure that those animals have homes. If there's something that we can do to be humane, making sure that we're humane in every way that we can be. If there's ways to keep the cats affordably alive, but in no circumstances do I want to put those cats back out into the wild or drop them off on the street, you know, or next to somebody's backyard where they were trapped and picked up to get into the sewers and various other things. I don't see that as a viable solution. Not when money doesn't grow on trees. I mean, if we were rich, sure, but it's not the way I would spend my resources. Is putting those cats back out in the streets. Anyway, we can certainly go back and continue to have more conversations, and I may be on the outs, but if we're talking about putting together a committee and having those kinds of further discussions, I think it would be good for us to make sure that the committee we put together has heard from the council that this is a program that we want to pursue, and that the council's had that opportunity to give that unified direction to those committee members so that the committee is acting on behalf of, council. So visioning workshop could be a perfect time for us to maybe make that, have that discussion, hash it out, and make sure and see if we want to fold it in. Because if it's folded in, I'll support it. But just my thoughts.
I think that's a great recommendation.
Okay. Budgeting workshop it is. Thank you, Councilmember Bradshaw. All right, we're going to move on. Anything else to add?
No, thank you for your time. Have a great evening.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it.
All right. Next up, agenda item number 9, CIP road projects and consent agenda presentation. Mr. Barba, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Leon Barba, City Engineer. Let me start off with the Lehman and Burleson Street project. I just kept this real brief. We are still working with the contractors to try to close these projects out. There's still a couple items we would like for them to complete before we issue their final payment. And our project manager is working with them as quickly as she can to get them to wrap those up. The Windy Hill Street and Drainage Project, it's 20% complete. We're still reviewing change order number 1. Contractor's still working on the south half of Windy Hill Road. We are having some intermittent street closures there. We started off with Indian paintbrush. We believe that should be opened up possibly next week sometime. Contractor was indicating maybe the 8th, but again, we just have to make sure that they get it opened up quickly. And then once they get that opened up, they'll be closing Cherrywood after we open up Indian paintbrush. And what they're doing there is removing the box culverts and replacing them with new ones. It's a pretty good visual of the project as it's proceeding. One thing I wanted to mention, we are closing the lane for a little bit at a time. The excavator that you see there, they're reaching out over those barriers to unload the culverts that are being brought in. So there are some temporary lane closures, but they're detouring traffic around those vehicles as they unload and let them move on. Southside wastewater improvements, we're at 75% complete. We have a couple more items to wrap up on the lift station. All the bores, major bores, the long bores that we were planning to do under I-35 are complete. That crew is working now on the west side of the I-35. They're putting in a new manhole that's where the new Elliott Branch project is going to tie into. The treatment plant expansion project, we're at 42% complete. They're continuing to do their work on their pipes, their forms, and rebar and concrete. We're still on schedule with this project and hope to get it open online in March of 2022. On this picture, I think I mentioned that waffle pattern down there at the lower right. They should have brought that concrete in today, and that should be covered up already. So they're moving very quickly with this project. So a lot of the concrete work is nearing completion on this project. Button Creek Interceptor, we're about 2% complete. Apparently one of the workers has COVID-19, so they had to restructure and get their different crews reassigned there. So they do plan to start working again later this week. So we've gotten a slow start on that one because of COVID-19. Well, site number 4, if you've been by there, you've seen this shrub. They can raise it and lift it as needed. All the blasting's completed, priming's completed, and they're getting ready to start putting the first coat of paint on the structure. Old Post Road, we do have a consent agenda item. It is the interlocal agreement between Hays County and the city. This is going to authorize us paying them for the materials that we're going to be using on Old Post Road. The county will be providing the labor and equipment for the project. Our next meeting is scheduled with them tomorrow to continue our coordination on the project. We do have our TxDOT permit, so that's in hand. We have that in our hand now. We're still continuing negotiations on the right-of-way at the south end of the project. Hays County is anticipating to start construction on March 1st of this year. Exeter Ranch Roundabout is approximately 85% complete. They plan to open up that north connection later this week, and they're still expecting total completion in about 6 to 8 weeks. We're still waiting to find out what their solution is going to be on the median. I checked with them today, and they said they're still working on the solution, so hopefully we'll get something fairly quick on that. This is a Paramount subdivision development. This is Opal Lane. They're about 30% complete, and they're thinking another 6 weeks for it to be completed. Once they complete this one, they're going to be moving over to Roland Lane. We do have 3 consent agenda items I wanted to bring to your attention. There's number 12, 13, 14. They're all related. Number 12 is reassigning a contract that Edmondson Reed had with the some suppliers, subcontractors. One was Byrne and Associates, the other was Fugro. They authorized them to do some work on the project at 104 Burleson and City Square Park. Unfortunately, we did not get a contract with Edmondson Reed, but these vendors have done the work. One of them is substantially complete, the other one is complete. So the items 13 and 14 will authorize payment to these vendors to pay them for the work that they did. We will be able to use the work that they have done, so we don't want to repeat that work again. And if you have any questions, one more item I wanted to mention. I did contact the TxDOT. As you know, they're doing those ramp upgrades on the relocations on I-35. They mentioned that they may be closing some of our frontage roads there. So they did say that in a few weeks, they will be closing Philomena at North Frontage Road. They couldn't give me an exact date, but as soon as I get better information, I'll pass that on to council and our citizens. And that's my presentation. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Leon. Any questions for Mr. Barber? Councilor Rizzo.
Yeah, Leon, you were talking about the consent agenda items, the last ones. What were you talking about, number 12, I believe?
Yes. Number 12 is a contract that Edmondson Reed had with Fugro. In order for us to be able to pay Fugro, they had to do a assignment and novation. A novation, by the way, Councilmember, I didn't know what that meant. That's the first time I've ever seen that word. So that means they're transferring the contract. It's an old contract. They're getting a new contract to replace the old contract. So they agreed to assign that contract to the city to allow the city to pay the vendor, Fugro.
So you're asking us to approve consent agenda item 12, correct? You're did you get that, Leon?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I didn't know if you were wanting us to wait on consent agenda item 12?
To approve it?
No, to wait on it, but you're asking to approve.
No.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
We need to have that approved so we can move forward with paying Fugro.
Okay.
They're the ones that have a contract with Edmondson Reed.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Leon.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Leon or staff on consent agenda items? Councilor Florescale.
Leon, number 12 has not been completed, or it has? Because you said 13 and 14.
Yeah, 13 and 14, the vendors have not been paid. For us to pay Fugro, that did all the geotechnical work, they had a contract with Environmental Reed and Associates. And we needed for Edmondson Reed and Associates to reassign that contract to the city so that we could pay Fugro for the work that they did on the project.
Okay, but did I hear you correctly when you said 13 and 14, the work has already been done, this is just for payment?
13, the work has not been completed. It's substantially complete.
Okay.
Once they complete it, then we will pay them for the work they've done. They've given us draft reports, and I've asked them to finalize those reports so that we can go ahead and pay them after we get the reports. On number 14, that work has already been done. It is complete.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments, motions?
If that's the end of his report, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 10 through 15.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Rizzo, seconded by Councilmember Ellison, that we approve the consent agenda items as read, 10 through 15. Is there any further discussion?
I do have a question on number 10.
Councilor Florescale.
It's just maybe it's a silly question, but as I pull up their application, it looks like the whole top of it is like, doesn't have the owner name or the submittal date. Nothing's been checked off. Doesn't have number 3. Doesn't have the ownership information, the name of the property owners. I was just curious if that's normal.
Backup material looks incomplete on the application side.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to look at it right now because, yeah, all of our applications are done online now. So this is probably the signed copy that we need that we can move forward, but all this information would have been provided through the customer self-service portal. If you need me to, I can get a printout of that for you later this week.
Yeah, before I vote on this, I would like to see it.
Did we have that information on the first reading of it?
We had the same exact
we vote-
information.
I couldn't tell you the answer to that. I very rarely, if ever, click through the application itself when I put this information together. So I'll have to go back and look at it again.
So since this is my district, I would like to hold off, because if I remember correctly, which I may be incorrect, but I remember it being empty the first time, and so it clicked. And so when I went back to see what I voted the first time, I realized I had voted yes, with the intention of asking you about that. And also trying to contact the homeowners, I think is 1450. On that same road, just to ask them what their opinion was, and I have a phone call out to them, and I'm just waiting to hear their response, but it does concern me.
Ordinarily, I would direct you towards Mr. Coleman. He's been our contact. He's been the applicant for this entire process. He informed us earlier this evening that he was not able to attend this meeting because he had a medical emergency. So I can't actually give you over to the gentleman who can answer your questions. All I can tell you is that I can look into it and get you some more information, like I said, later this week.
But we could have gotten that information prior to this very moment. I mean, this has been through planning and zoning, first reading of council, now we're at second reading of council. So that's not a compelling reason not to vote to postpone.
No,
I mean,
and that's, I don't mind voting. I'm just saying I would like to make an educated vote, and I did try to reach out and ask those people and contact them. And again, when I noticed the application, that's why I brought it up. The first time, it must have slipped my mind. I must have not asked the question. But again, that's why I'm asking it now.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment to my motion. I'd like to approve consent agenda items 11 through 15, and then take a separate vote on item number 10.
Second.
We already had a second, I think.
Well, we have parliamentary, we have a motion on the table, and if you want to amend the motion, we can make a vote on the amendment.
Yeah, definitely will.
So do you want to have a discussion first about whether we want to postpone agenda item number 10, or do we want to move it forward as well?
I'm for moving it forward, just having a separate vote from the others.
All right, so no objections. We'll pull the motions just entirely and let you restate your motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 11 through 15.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Rizzo, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kelly. We approve agenda items number 11 through 15. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We have a
Can we
motion
get a second on that motion?
I'm sorry,
Yeah, there was,
Flores Kelly, seconded.
okay. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda item 10.
Second, it's been moved by Councilmember Rizzo, seconded by the mayor, that we approve agenda item number 10. Is there discussion on that motion?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilmember
If
Ellison.
I could just get a better understanding from Councilmember Flores Kell, what her concern is about moving forward with this agenda item in particular. As you stated, through all the different processes, what would be the concern or what is missing?
So this is a second reading. The first reading, I obviously made a mistake and maybe didn't do my full research. So in doing that, I wanted to see the application, which I originally wanted to do the first time after I left the council meeting. And then I realized that the application was blank. And then again, life happens. I didn't recognize that until 2 days ago. And so I should have wrote city staff and I should have come prepared, but unfortunately I didn't. And it seems like nobody else here really understood that there was a blank application either. So that falls on all of us. So in order to do a diligent work and to make sure that I know what I'm voting on, I just wanted to see a complete application, which I don't think is too much to ask for.
If I may, I think her concern is who is the developer, right? That's what you want. You're wanting just some information on.
Just basic information, and as I stated before, I'd also reached out to the homeowner at 1450. That's irrelevant because they had not reached back out. But yes, I would just like to be knowledgeable whenever I make my vote. And if it doesn't happen, so be it. That's all I was asking for.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify, I understand that. I guess I'm just asking what information was it that you feel like you're missing, and perhaps if there's any opportunity for that to be clarified right now, or could staff not provide that information right now, or is that not readily accessible?
So for example, the application lists the name of the owner, the submittal date, just a checklist making sure that they paid all their fees, name of property ownership. I mean, I think it's just basic information that I would like. And if he has that information, that's great. And if he wants to share that with me, that's great, but that does not give me any time to do any research.
And staff, do we not have that information really accessible right now?
I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to have to rely on my staff to get me that. I don't have the ability to get to it. So I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow when City Hall opens and staff returns to their desks, and I can ask them to search that for me.
To be clear.
Understood. And simply, yeah.
I was just going to make the point that a completed application is not a requirement for rezoning, and is not intended by state law to be
Understood.
the basis for which we make those types of votes for zoning cases. So we've got to be careful how we phrase this conversation, but the zoning cases have to be made on the merits of the application, not on who made the application. That's the reason why that wouldn't have drawn a red flag for me, because I rarely look at who is the person applying and spend most of the time thinking about the zoning itself. So that's why I'm fine to vote for it, and that is information that we could have as a council reached out and gotten from staff ahead of time.
It could also have been in there.
That is a valid point.
So although I will accept my responsibility of not asking prior, and this will be a lesson learned, and that crow does not taste good, but I will let you know that it's responsibility of everybody.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries 6-1. Next up, agenda item number 16, second reading, ordinance amending chapter 53 zoning of the city of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of rezoning approximately 57 acres of land from R1-2 and retail services to plan unit development, single family district attached to R1A. This item is not the item that was postponed, or is it? No, this is carried over to second reading.
This is item 16.
This is call 57. Were we going to postpone this one or not? I'm confused.
Not this one.
Can we please rewrite these agenda headings somehow so that they're legible, that when I read them, I can understand what I'm reading? All right, which item is this? I'm sorry. Oh, Kyle Mortgage Investors. Okay. All right, Mr. Koontz, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. For the record, my name is Howard Koontz. I'm the Community Development Director. This is the second read for zoning of 57 acres on, I believe it's Ranch Road 150. Yeah, Ranch Road 150, across the street from the PEC office. This is the second read. At your first reading, it was recommended to approve unanimously, 7-0. In the interim, if you've looked through the backup material, you've seen there's been some update to the terms of the PUD, as well as a letter from Mr. Green, who's the adjacent property owner. There was some discussion last time about some of the lot metrics and some of the design of the PUD. Those have been incorporated into these documents, and we've gotten the new documents posted for you. So otherwise, this is the second read, so I can make myself available for any questions you might have. And I also see Mr. Martin's on the call as well.
Any questions for Mr. Koontz? Comments, Councilor Rizzo?
Just a comment real quick. I want to thank the developer for meeting us out there and addressing some of the issues we had. I know Ms. Johnson had issues on historical tree out there. We were able to identify it, find out that it's not on this property that's being developed, and we looked for some springs and some other areas. And I just want to thank Ms. Johnson for going out there, being a trooper. She trekked the property with us, and we're out there clearing a little brush while we were there to get to some of the areas, but we were able to do that, and we were able to address all the concerns, even concerns that some of the residents had, including Mr. Frankie. So I just want to thank them for all their help and for going out there and meeting us.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the council? Motions?
Mayor, real quick, thank you, Councilmember Rizzo, for telling us about that, and certainly thank you to Milestone for willing to be such a great partner in our city. You blew us away last time with the presentation and what the type of development we're looking for, and you not only just say it with your presentations or with your words, you follow it up with your actions. So thank you all for doing that, and certainly looking to address any of the concerns that were brought forward at our last meeting.
Mayor, just one last, I'd just like to thank Councilmember Kell for meeting us out there as well. Appreciate it. Thank you. When you hang out with country boys, you're going to trek through some woods. I'm going to tell you right now, it was a fun trek. We enjoyed it, got to see some really nice wildlife and trees out there. It was great. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve and consider action item number 16.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Rizzo, seconded by Councilor Ellison. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 17, second reading, an ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of assigning original zoning to approximately 1.4 acres of land from agriculture AG to retail services RS for property located at 101 Sunflower Circle in Hayes County. It's just so much easier when it's from one zoning to another instead of, it gets complicated. Mr. Koontz, go ahead.
Again, this is the second reading for a zoning item that was brought up at the last meeting. The council recommended 6-1 to approve the request to go from ag to RS for this property. It's about 1.5 acres on the northwest corner of BB and Dacey, so kitty corner to Science Hall Elementary. It is located on Dacey, which will be expanded with a project that's being undertaken by the county to improve Dacey Lane all the way up to the north to the city limits of the Utah to our north. So I can make myself available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Koontz. Any questions on this item? Comments?
Mayor,
Councilor Ellison.
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item 17 as written.
Second that.
Yeah, it's been moved by Councilor Ellison, seconded by Councilor Tobias. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. All right, this is the other one. Next up, agenda item number 18, postponed. This item has an open public hearing, an ordinance amending Chapter 53 zoning of the City of Kyle, Texas to rezone approximately 19.5 acres of land from retail services to multifamily for property located at 5492 Kyle Center Drive. This item has a current public hearing open, so we're going to have to keep it open. I believe the intention is to continue to postpone until we get more traction. So with that said, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I'm going to keep the public hearing open. And did we need official action?
To postpone.
Yeah, so motion to postpone to the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Second.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilor Rizzo. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 19, discussion and update of activity related to the Texas Downtown Association plan for Kyle. This is being brought by Councilor Tobias and Councilor Ellison.
Councilman Tobias, you want to lead off, or?
Oh, sure. I'll go ahead and lead off for just a minute. Okay. This is something that I have been working with Councilman Ellison on this, the downtown initiative. The way I look at this is that the downtown should be that is the heart of our community. It should be an inviting, attractive, and a modern staple in our city. Our downtown needs to have a sense of traditional feel and to be historic at the same time. The way I'm looking at this is that every year we have our families, new families that come from different walks of life moving to our area, yet our downtown has not made any progress with the city's growth. I've always believed that our main focus point with our downtown should always start with our square. The downtown, it's easily accessible to the residents in some of the nearby subdivisions and neighborhoods. And some of the ideas that I like to put forward is that we can have the completion of Burleson with the new sidewalks can be utilized for pedestrian traffic to attend downtown events. Partnership with downtown businesses and community leaders can help promote a large audience. And possibly to get with city and other community leaders to recruit new businesses, such as family dining, entertainment, along with the possibility of extended hours, especially during the holiday season. My little personal thing is growing up here, I remember the old city hall, and the square was a place where city festivals took place, like the Fair on the Square. Example, like the King of Kyle. And just for the record, my oldest son is still the reigning King of Kyle from many, many years ago. So that was a great times where we had the whole community come out, and we'd like to be able to maybe do something like that again. Market gatherings, including our traditional holidays events. These were wonderful celebrations that I think that we could still be in our future, but then again is how do we get there? And how do we move forward on the vision? Councilman Ellison has also some good input as well.
I think you really set the stage well there. So I'm going to give a little bit of background also. So in 2019, spring, summer, we had a lot of discussion about our downtown. It started from a rezoning case and then parlayed into a number of different town halls that council members had, as well as one large one that the city put on a Saturday, and we had 70-some people here at our city hall on a Saturday morning for like 3 hours, giving their input and showing their interest in our downtown. And these folks were from not only our downtown residents, they were residents from outside of our downtown. They were representatives of the business community in and outside of our downtown, which, we said it back then. It showed how important our downtown is to this entire city. And so what we wanted to do, and you all might remember last year, I proposed an agenda item to create a task force for the downtown, the implementation of the Texas Downtown Association's assessment that they provided. And I want to take this moment to apologize for not getting that information on the backup material for our agenda. I know that is something that we've discussed for our agenda items, and certainly apologize about that. But the email was sent out this afternoon. All of the information, though, has been on our website ever since the assessment happened, so it's been on there. And so the Texas Downtown Association did a full day assessment, meeting with not only city staff, council, but residents and other stakeholders throughout the city. And they came back with a number of different recommendations, many of which were already in our downtown revitalization plan of our comp plan. But nonetheless, gave us an outside perspective and view as well. and for a minimal cost. I'll say that as well. One of the things we wanted to do is, one, let you all remind the council that we are keeping abreast of what's going on downtown and the efforts that are being made. And while everything, the goal was never to have everything go through the task force of the downtown, we just wanted to let you all know that we are keeping a running list on the things that are meeting the goals of the Texas Downtown Association, and we certainly champion those efforts. I'd like to talk a little bit about what we have done and how it meets many of those objectives in the Texas Downtown Association assessment, and what we hopefully will continue to work on this year as a task force, but also as a council and city administration as a whole. So some of the things that have been completed or ongoing, we compiled a list here. Stakeholder meetings, ongoing with that. Pedestrian crosswalk signs, that was one of the very early initiatives that were made. Certainly was appreciative of that. And I know we had some kickback and various things about those pedestrian signs down the middle of our Center Street, but that is the goal. It's to be a traffic calming measure and to alert vehicular traffic that this is a high pedestrian zone. It may not be quite where we want it to be just yet, but that is the goal, and setting the expectations going forward with that. So a great implementation, and it was something taken right from the Texas Downtown Association, their assessment. The project going on at 104 South Burleson. Updates to the City Square, the landscaping project that we have heavily invested in, and we're all very excited about. And we've even seen our community showing interest in that. So big win on that one. Railroad siding relocation. Wayfinding signage is an ongoing effort as well. Burleson road improvements in general. Obviously, all of our residents along Burleson Road appreciate that, but it's a big part of our downtown as well. PIE. Both the food and the number day events. Santa on the Square improvements. Huge victory for us as a city. The past two Decembers, the investment in our Santa on the Square efforts and our overall lighting of the square, that is something that has brought joy to our residents, as we can see. And that is something that I hope the council will continue to champion and invest in as we go forward. And a lot of what we're doing is coming from the park dedication funds that developers pay as a fee. And so that's a really great way for taking money that we get from developers, not from the ad valorem property tax, and increasing a quality of life initiative that our residents want to see. I've talked about this before, and how many of our residents during that downtown time talk about how they're glad to have a Christmas and lighting experience, that they don't have to go to Austin Trail of Lights or even Sights and Sounds in San Marcos. They have something right here in their own downtown. So big win on that one. Thank you, council. Business recruitment position added to Economic Development Department. That's a position we added last budget cycle, and looking forward to what we can get out of that position is down. And then the last item for completed or ongoing items is our downtown wireless, where we have our Wi-Fi capabilities downtown. And certainly people are no stranger to needing internet access. So not only for recreational use for people to meander and sit in our square and our gazebo, but also for future programming once we get past the pandemic and things like that, for merchants and various different things that need access to Wi-Fi. That is something that's free in our downtown square. Some of the items that are still needed, and what the Texas Downtown Association both told us, as well as some of the things that the task force and we'll be looking at and keeping an eye on. Number one, huge one, is the update to zoning and the overlay. Code improvements, development standards, things of that nature. We really need to dive into that. Hate to bring up a sore red subject, but one of the things was what happened with the repainting of the building. Some people certainly had some feels about that. That can be cleaned. Those types of things can be cleaned up in our code, and so that's what we want to look at. And so certainly, you know, that can start in planning and zoning, or that can start with us. But those are one of the huge things we need to look at, as well as the overall permitted uses within our downtown districts for CBD1 and CBD2. Additional signage, additional events, programming was a huge call for in the Texas Downtown Association's plan that draws foot traffic and persons to our downtown. Dedicated manager, so a staff appointed person, not just someone who's doing it on the side from their regular responsibilities, but an actual dedicated staff member for our downtown revitalization efforts. So something to be mindful of in future budget workshops. Route or remove highway destination from Center Street. Incentives for retail restaurants. Additional PI Capital of Texas branding. One of the things that the Downtown Association recommended was to go all in on the PI brand. And if we're going to do it. Art program, which is a huge draw as well. Once again, that goes with just programming. A lot of folks are familiar with various different, we do have our market days, but other vendors and farmers markets and things like that. All these things are programming and events that can bring attention and traffic to our downtown. Downtown Business Organization and Shop Local campaign led by the Chamber of Commerce. Continue to build that a strong relationship with our chamber and help having their assistance leading that effort. Co-working and small business assistance space led by the chamber. The properties of 108 and 201 South Burleson. And the senior center. One of the pieces of feedback from the Texas Downtown Association was certainly don't want to abandon our seniors and what they have done for this former city hall, but looking at ways to further program out that the crew activity center building and getting more use out of it was another big piece of feedback that we received. Michael, did you have anything? Sorry, Councilmember Tobias, did you have anything you wanted to add about that?
No, you pretty much hit a lot of it. I know that we have brought up before about the art program for downtown, reaching out to local artists that would be interested in maybe looking into joining up with this and displaying some of their art pieces or wherever it could be. But other than that, you explained it all. There's been a lot of good progress that has been made, especially with the new sidewalks, like I mentioned, Burleson. That's a big plus, of course, with the signages, but also doing some of my other research. A lot of the cities that are revamping their downtown, a lot of it has to do with sidewalks. Foot traffic is a big thing right now. People want to be able to safely come down to their downtown area and have adequate walking space, and of course the signages for the traffic and so forth. So I think once we get some of these, maybe looking into the zoning you had mentioned before in the codes or something like that, we can be able to progress from there. Because I know there's been a lot of emphasis on Uptown. I know there's a lot of emphasis on a lot of projects around the city. But I think we've had these conversations before where the holiday events are some of our big attractions, and people are moving into our area that are new, they're young, and they have a new family, and they want to have something of their own. They want something to say, hey, look, this is the city that I'm in. and also the residents that's been here a while to be able to showcase it. So, I think our vision is there, and I appreciate your input and your expertise on this and all your dedication to this. But I just see that we're heading in the right path, that we hope council can really see where we're going forward on this and get their support as well.
Absolutely, Councilmember Tobias, and just a couple other comments before we conclude our presentation and open up to council. Even before the Texas Downtown Association came and we really started with our downtown revitalization efforts, we had the historic City Hall restoration, the train depot restoration, the downtown streetscape, and including park improvements. So those were some efforts that have already been done. And so now we've added to that list. And so Councilmember Tobias and I just wanted to express our gratitude and thanks for the council continuing the initiatives and efforts and ideas that were given to us by the Texas Downtown Association. We think we've made great progress in the year and a half since that assessment, as you all can see. And we just thought it would be helpful to kind of have that list read out loud. And sometimes you kind of forget what has happened and what progress has been made until you really write it down in list form. The other thing that was really important to us when we were discussing the task force, was that we wanted to bring this forward at a council meeting agenda so that the public can also be aware. Obviously, as I stated earlier, a lot of interest with our town hall that we had from all over our city, but we want to be open and transparent with our community. Those outside of the downtown, those within our downtown for sure, the business community, that these are the efforts we're looking to do. And a lot of these efforts were, these weren't the items that were pushed back against the community. If we, for our new council members, certainly I recommend going back and watching that video from that day, that Saturday where we had the event. There wasn't an objection to a lot of what you see here. Bars was essentially the main objection. And as you can see, none of this is about that. And so these are all things we feel like our community can really get behind. And we want to be open and transparent with our residents, particularly in downtown, of what we're doing and what we're trying to, and what revitalization really means and what that looks like. And so I know a lot of people have some apprehension with that because there's a lot of uncertainty. Well, this is what we are trying to do. And so that list as well of the things needed to go are certainly a lot of hard work that's going to be needed to accomplish those things. But it also is going to take an effort with our community. And we want to make sure our residents and business community are included in those processes. So we ended, and then by extension, just wanted the council to know these are the things we were going to be working on over this next year, and also could potentially be bringing recommendations to the council throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. Any comments or feedback? Councilor Rizzo.
Yeah, thank y'all for the presentation. I appreciate it. One of the things you focused on, Councilmember Tobias, was something you talked about was connectivity. One of the things that, because I did sit in on these meetings and was out here for the assessment, one of the things they really focused on was our downtown. They said everything grows from the middle out, never from the outside in. So one thing we need to focus on before we even look at redistricting or CBD 1, CBD 2 is make sure we're growing our downtown. The next thing we have to do is get the buy-in from the public. After the buy-in, you have to have the connectivity. If you grow from the outside in, you're going to have businesses that close down. Always remember that everything grows from the inside out. So make sure that we're keeping that in mind. Let's not jump the gun on anything, and let's continue to develop the square. Let's continue to get the residents buy-in. One thing is certain, if you do it for the local visitor, the out-of-town visitors will come as well. But you got to get that buy-in from the local visitors as well. Always remember that. That's the people in the community. But the connectivity is probably the key thing after you grow the middle of your downtown. Having the sidewalks, having the infrastructure in place will definitely provide a good growth pattern and allow us to grow in a way that everybody will prosper.
Any other thoughts? Councilmember Flores-Kell.
I want to say thank you to Councilmember Ellison and Tobias. This part of town is really part of where I ran. I love everything about our downtown as far as the feel of it, and I think you guys are both on target when you talk about fixing it up. And first and foremost, Mr. Tobias has the best stories. If anybody ever takes 15, 20 minutes out of their day to talk to him, he will tell you what old Kyle was like. And I tell him all the time, your input is so valuable because you have information, as does Mr. Rizzo, because I know he's going to get jealous if I don't. You have information that we just don't know. We were not here. So I think he is so valuable to us. We all bring something to this dais. What Mr. Tobias and Rizzo bring is immeasurable. And so in order to keep the Kyle feeling alive, I think we need them and their input as much as everybody else's that's in the downtown. And so I am excited about this. And if at any point you need an extra set of hands or an eyes or mouth, whatever, you let me know and I would love to join this team.
Thank you. Appreciate those words.
Anything else?
Nothing else from the rest of council. We certainly appreciate the feedback. That is something we take very sincerely, and Councilmember Tobias and I will continue to work towards those efforts, like we said, and bringing back initiatives, while also we have committed to being those champions and willing to be a part of that outreach to the community that Councilmember Rizzo spoke of. That we have acknowledged and said that many times on the task force meetings that we've had, that is a key part of this. So your concerns are heard loud and clear, and we share those concerns, and we will commit to doing that.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. Appreciate it. Thank you, Councilmember Tobias. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Unless there's anything else, we're going to keep moving. All right, next up, agenda item number 20, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, amending the City of Kyle, Texas Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, fee schedule to reflect an increase in building inspection fees to cover costs associated with third-party inspections. Mr. Earp.
Mayor, Council, for the record, James Earp, Assistant City Manager. This item is actually pretty straightforward. It's exactly what it is shown on the surface. I think everyone knows that we're experiencing some of the highest demand in our city's history, and we have had to be relying on third-party inspectors to handle the volume of inspections that are occurring. Those companies that we are adding to the list and that we use charge more than what we're currently charging the builders. So this recommendation here is to modify our fee schedule so we're at least covering our costs to utilize these third parties. And we will also be bringing some additional third-party agreements to the city so we can expand our offerings even further within the next probably month.
James, the fee schedule will apply to all permits, though, regardless of which contractor you use or the cost?
That's correct. Effectively, the third parties are pretty close to the same. So if anything else, we're under market. So it's a scenario where we actually have the market, and we're setting it to where we cover the most expensive of the options.
You feel
for
comfortable
inspection
that these rates will allow for us to keep up with the pace by getting enough contracts?
Yes, I mean this amount reflects the amount that would be required to pay the third parties that we're bringing to you within the next month.
Comments, motions?
Mayor,
Councilor Ellison.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda item as written.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Ellison, seconded by Councilmember Flores-Kell that we approve agenda item number 20. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Next up, agenda item number 21, consider a request to remove the required public utility easement for the Plum Creek Uptown Central Park. Mr. Koontz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is curious in the city of Kyle. Without going too far into the details, because we are largely suburban in form, we have a requirement when new lots are created that a portion of that lot be reserved for the installation of wet utilities, or sometimes dry utilities. But either way, we want to be able to get to underground utility conduits without having to go through pavement. This is typical in a suburban setting. It is not typical in an urban setting. The agenda item for you tonight is in recognition of creating Plum Creek's Uptown project. The Uptown project is densely urban in form and function, as you're no doubt aware. And all of the utilities in the Uptown project are being located within the street rights of way, and they're either underneath sidewalks or underneath the street pavement themselves. But they will not be contained largely as running through the lots that are in the project. So the requirement to put an easement on a lot when there will be no utility is superfluous, and the applicant has come forward with the request to be able to remove that easement so that they might be able to develop on that section of land that will otherwise go unused. Staff has reviewed it. We found no threat to health, safety, or welfare, and support the request as it's been presented, and would recommend that the City Council do the same.
Thank you, Mr. Koontz. Any questions or comments?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21.
It's been motioned by Councilman Rizzo, seconded by Councilman Ellison, that we approve agenda item number 21. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next up, agenda item number 22, presentation on a proposed ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, regulating sex offender residency within the city and establishing child safety zones. Chief Barnett.
Yes, sir. Mayor and Council, thank you. This is Jeff Barnett, Chief of Police, for the record. So tonight we wanted to bring you an ordinance that would establish regulations for registered sex offenders and where they can reside and visit within our city. This came about from our registered sex offender compliance officer, Officer Doggo Pates, who has been serving in that capacity along with Detective Carrasco for a number of years. And through his experience, he realized that other communities were enacting ordinances similar to what we brought before you tonight that establish residency restrictions on where registered or certain registered sex offenders can reside within their communities. That has had some role in the decision-making for registered sex offenders and where they are choosing to reside here in Central Texas, meaning that some registered sex offenders are choosing to live within the city limits of Kyle because we do not have an ordinance that currently regulates where they can reside within the city. And in an effort to promote a community that is safe for our families and for the children in our community and places where they may congregate, we wanted to bring for you an ordinance for consideration. So in general, I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to see if I can take over the screen for a second, and I'll share with you some of the ordinance material. And I'm just going to confirm, can you see the ordinance that I have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good deal. I'm just going to hit the highlights of our ordinance. So part of our state mandated services to the community is to provide a registered sex offender officer or a compliance officer. Officer Pates and Detective Carrasco maintain those duties for the Kyle Police Department. And it requires that certain sex offenders convicted of certain sex crimes are required to register with the state of Texas, and they do that through registration with their local law enforcement agency where they reside. So we currently have here in the city of Kyle approximately 68 registered sex offenders who register with our police department and reside within our community. That fluctuates on a monthly basis, somewhere between 65 and 75 registered sex offenders that call our community home on any given day. So I'm going to cover some of the most important definitions, and I don't think it'll take us long to get through this ordinance. It's a relatively simple and direct ordinance. A child sex offender this is going to be the type of sex offender that we're talking about. One that has preyed upon a child means a person who's required to register with the Texas Department of Public Safety's sex offender database. Now, that database is something that the community, any member of the community, can search via the internet. That's a publicly accessible database. But if that individual is required by state law based upon a conviction in court and an order of that court to register with the state, then they would do so through our police department if they want to live or they do live in our community. So we are talking about in this ordinance child sex offenders and those that are required to register. That means if we skip down, you see the definition of a minor, and it means that the person has committed a crime against or involving a minor. I'm going to skip through some of the definitions of residences because I'll come back to them in a minute, but I'm going to scroll down to 23-291 of the proposed ordinance. This is where this is actually where the restriction is applied, and it says it will be unlawful for a child sex offender to establish a permanent residence, a temporary residence, or to be a recurring visitor at a residence located within 1,500 feet of any premises where children commonly gather. And we have that defined where children commonly gather within our ordinance. That's going to talk about places such as parks, schools, walking trails, and other locations that I'll share with you. But this ordinance would establish that they cannot live within 1,500 feet of any of those premises where children commonly gather. We also added a component that is found in numerous other communities across the state that own the Halloween holiday on specifically October the 31st, that all registered sex offenders that fit this definition have to leave decorations or exterior porch light, or that they cannot have on decorations or exterior porch lights or otherwise invite trick-or-treaters to the premises on that particular day, on the day of Halloween. So basically they have to turn off their Halloween lights and they have to make their home not inviting to trick-or-treaters, particularly on that evening. And then our officers would go out and make those patrols in the community. 23-293 specifically tells you that the distance from one location to establish the 1,500 feet is from property line to property line to the nearest property line or premises where children commonly gather. So it is a direct line from property line where the sex offender might want to live to the property line of a place identified as a place where children would commonly gather. A second component of that is that we are going to have a map that would be publicly available on our city website through the police department pages. We are going to, we also have added in here that someone who is a homeowner, I'm going to go back here to 23-291B, it is also unlawful for anyone to let or rent any place, structure, or part thereof, including a manufactured home, trailer, or other conveyance, with the knowledge that it to be used as a permanent residence, temporary residence, or a place where a person is going to visit in violation of this ordinance to someone who is a registered sex offender of minors, meaning that a landlord would be prohibited from renting or leasing their property to a registered sex offender fitting the definition that we've talked about tonight. What we would expect a landlord or property owner to do to show their due diligence would be that they would ask their applicants in some form if they would be in violation of this ordinance. We would actually encourage them to provide a copy of the ordinance to the applicants or share that with them and make that person affirm that they are not a registered sex offender of a minor, as we've identified in this case. The database that I described earlier that is maintained by the Texas Department of Public Safety is accessible to the public. We would encourage landlords and property owners to check that database against their potential renter and the application that was submitted. And if they've done both of those things, then we would feel that the property owner or landlord has done their due diligence, and the burden would actually be placed upon the registered sex offender, who would actually be the person who has more responsibility to ensure that they are living someplace that is lawful and to make sure that they have not lied on their application or rental agreement. And more importantly, a sex offender, as we're talking about, is required to register with the Kyle Police Department immediately upon moving into our community. if we were to find out that somebody had lied to a property owner or landlord and denied that they were a registered sex offender fitting this definition and then moved into the community, they would actually be facing immediate criminal charges, and they could be they would be subject to violations not only of this ordinance, but also a much higher classification of criminal offenses, and could be put back in jail or prison based on what their charges were and where they are on parole or probation. So they would have severe consequences if they were to be found living in our community and not having registered with us. And obviously our police department and our compliance officers would ensure that their address, that their intended address was somewhere where they could lawfully live. That's kind of a quick reference. I wanted to go back and show you real quickly here. We have premises where children commonly gather. It's kind of a wide definition. It means areas including improved and unimproved lots where the following are located or plan to be located. It includes public parks, private or public schools. It does exclude in-home schools. It includes daycare centers, private recreational facilities, including parks, water parks, pools, playgrounds, skate parks, arcades, and youth athletic fields, even those that are owned by residential property owners associations. So you can see we have a fairly wide definition to help us describe premises where children commonly gather. There's a few definitions here, what determines if you are a permanent resident, or if this is your permanent residence, or if you are going to be a reoccurring visitor, or if you are establishing a temporary residence. But nonetheless, if someone who is a registered sex offender in this definition is going to move or visit our community, they would need to be aware of these three definitions and determine how long they intend to stay and make sure they would not be in violation. A violation of this ordinance for any individual will be a Class C misdemeanor, and it's actually a violation for each day that they are in violation of this ordinance. They could subsequently be cited to court and receive multiple violations if that were the case. I was going to show you some quick numbers here. Our compliance officer, do you now see the memo from Officer Pates?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just making sure. I just want to quickly show you a chart that Officer Pates put together to give some perspective of where the city of Kyle sits in comparison to our nearby communities. You can see here how many communities around us currently have an ordinance in place. Most of the communities have set a designation of between 1,000 feet and up to some communities use 2,000 feet as the minimum distance where the sex offender can live next to some of these kinds of properties that we talked about. You see the associated populations so that you can see we're kind of in the middle of these for the most part. You see how many registered sex offenders they currently have in those communities. You even put together a ratio of how many residents to registered sex offenders to give you some idea of how many registered sex offenders live in the community. And then you can see their distance out there. Is it 1,000 feet? Is it the 1,500 feet that we're looking for, and the 2,000 feet that some communities use? The rest of his document basically outlines kind of the ordinance that was ultimately drafted. This was kind of an early document. You can see he's been working on this back as January of 2020. The last thing I want to show you super quickly here is just a very brief, this is not the final map. This is a work in progress. But based on the parks, schools, and places that we outlined, the highlighted pink areas would be the kind, these would be the areas where registered sex offenders would be prohibited from living. And with that said, I'll kind of pause for any questions and try to provide you some guidance. I do have Officer Pates and his supervisor, Sergeant Bone, on the line as well.
Thank you, Chief. Can you repeat that last sentence? The map. Can you scroll the map up just a little so we can see the legend there?
Yes, sir. Right. Does that get it?
Yes, thank you. So to
Yes, sir.
This is according to the current ordinance. This is the map, or is this according to the proposed ordinance?
So the proposed. So currently today, we do not restrict where registered sex offenders can live within the community of any type. We do not have any restrictions. The only restrictions that might apply to a sex offender that wanted to move to Kyle today would be something that a judge or a parole officer specifically put individuals' living conditions. Otherwise, we, the city of Kyle, do not regulate where they live. And for the most part, most do not have any restrictions. Officer Page reminded me today that out of our 68 sex offenders, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 of those would fit the definition of what we were talking about. And what that means is they offended or attempted to offend against a person that would be identified as a minor, meaning that person would have been under that 17. So a very small number of registered sex offenders currently registered with us would not be, this would not apply to them. By and far, the large majority of those, about 60 of the 68, this ordinance would apply to them. In pink, light peach colored sections that you see, this would in the future apply to them. I do need to point out this would not be retroactive. This would not apply to the residents of where people live today. This would be going forward for new residents or new registered sex offenders moving in, or those that are moving within the community if they're moving from one house to another, and those that have a lease that expires upon the expiration of that lease or other agreement that they currently have in place. The landlord would then be prevented from, if they were within 150 feet or 1,500 feet, the landlord would be prohibited from renewing that lease agreement in the future. They would be able to continue to live there as long as their current agreement is in place, but they couldn't move to another location in town in violation, and they couldn't renew their contracts. But I do want to remind you, this is not a final map. We've already noticed there's another place that we feel that should be added on here, and that would be the PAC located at 1626 in Kohlers. So there would be yet another small area in the north middle part of this map that would be added. And then as each new park or new facility is added in the community, obviously we would update the map with that new information as well. And this would be available, ultimately it would be available on the city's website through the PD.
But would not apply to our ETJ?
Correct. This is within the city limits only.
All right. That seems all very clear, just as you said. Officer Pates, I want to hear from you. You got to tell us something. What are your thoughts here?
Well, hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you for having me on, first of all. I'll tell you how this came about. We had a sex offender that moved here from Austin, but he wanted to move to Cedar Park. And I asked him why he wanted to, or why he didn't move to Cedar Park with his grandma. Instead, he moved down here. And he said, and I quote, he said, "I can't throw a rock without being in violation in that city." And I asked him, "What do you mean by that?" And then he told me that they have a city ordinance. And that's when I started getting the ball rolling and started thinking about this and started looking at our numbers and the location. Well, I mean, we're 5 minutes south of Austin, next door to San Marcos. The location. It is a very hotbed for sex offenders to want to be in. I mean, the price is right, the location is right, close to everything, and we have just had an influx of sex offenders, coming in and coming out, leaving, and a lot of them have family in the area that they want to stay with. So I think this could help the kids a lot, because as the city grows, who else are we going to be inviting into the city? You guys have been talking about families and stuff like that and how you want this community to grow. I think we can protect them with this.
No doubt. It seems robust. I'm noticing that if implemented, the essentially eliminates sex offenders from being able to persist in the city. I mean, that's intense. And I the grandfathering clause was also, I thought, really interesting, because this idea that if they lease here, which I would assume the majority of them are in that leasing category, maybe not actually, I don't know, but that's also pretty prohibitive. I mean, they're going to have to, what if we pass a law and their lease expires 2 months later, they're going to be in violation in 2 months' time because of the ordinance, just because they needed to renew their lease. I don't know. This is listed just for presentation, so questions, comments, feedback. Councilman Rizzo.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing this ordinance forward. It's great that you want to protect our children. It's amazing. That should be, as a community, our number one priority is protecting our children, families, above all. I did have an email from a resident here in Kyle, has a few questions on the ordinance. Their concern was on when someone's trying to purchase a home in Kyle, how will they be vetted? Will that fall on the realtor? Is the first question.
Well, no, that's a good question. I can answer that for you, sir. So anytime any sex offender wants to move to the city of Kyle, since I'm in charge of all the sex offender registry, they have to let me know in advance that they want to move here. And if this were to go in, be implemented, they would call me, first of all, to see if wherever they're buying a house would be okay or would be, they wouldn't be in violation. I would look at the map and I would let them know. And I get these calls all the time from sex offenders asking, hey, do you guys have an ordinance? Or can I live here? Or can I live there? So they vet themselves before they even move here, because that's a big investment on them wanting to move to the city. And they know that other cities have this type of ordinance where they can't live just anywhere.
Okay, so this wouldn't be something that's imposed on the seller, like the seller would have a ramification if he sold to someone that was on this list, correct? It would fall on it would fall on the sex offender, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
because they would already know if they could even live in the city or in whatever part of the city that they're buying a house before they buy the house or rent.
So, and that'd be everybody in the city, that's including PIDs, PUDs, anything like that? You'd be aware of that?
Say the last part again?
The PIDs, people living in PIDs also, would those be included? A PID?
PIDs?
Yes, they would be. As long as they're anywhere in our incorporated city limits, this would apply to them. And council also add, the restriction is on where the sex offender lives. So the mere fact that they might sell a home to a registered sex offender would in no way put them in jeopardy of being in violation. The real violation comes when the sex offender resides at a residence. So even technically a sex offender could actually own the home and then not live there and rent that out or have some other arrangements with other family living there. And that wouldn't even be a violation. It's when the sex offender moves into the home and then resides within the 1,500 feet requirement restrictions.
Okay. I know there's some circumstances y'all brushed on that there's different levels of sex offenders. One of the questions was, what if somebody was a 20-year-old with a 17-year-old and then later on got married but was still classified as a sex offender? Would they fall into that qualification?
If they are still required to register on the Texas DPS registration program, and they fit the definition of assaulting or attempting to assault a minor, then yes, sir, they would still be required to follow this ordinance, because they are also still identified by the state as a child sex offender that we have identified in our ordinance.
Okay, cool. I think that's the end of their questions. Thank you, Chief, for bringing this forward. I think it's great that we're doing this and we're moving forward with this. You got with Paige, made sure that this ordinance was not superseding any kind of state statute or anything like that. And if it was all done well, I commend y'all on doing y'all's homework on it and bringing this forward. Thank you very much for y'all's hard work.
Thank you, guys.
Any other questions? Councilman Bradshaw.
I just want to thank you both for taking the time to put all of the hard work that you did into this presentation. And if we were voting on this, I would pass it right now. I am a mother of two, and the only thing that I would change about it is the grandfather addendum. I would say let's implement this and then roll with it for both current and future residents.
Current too, you're saying you're fine with them getting out of town?
The ones who are living here? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councilmember Flores Kale.
As a mother and a grandmother, I find it hard to believe that there are San Marcos and New Braunfels do not have this ordinance, because I think after reading it, why would we not have one? So it's confuses me that progressive cities like San Marcos and New Braunfels don't have this ordinance. So you guys are to be commended for being proactive. I am huge on being proactive. I do not want to be reactive. I don't want something to happen and then we have to respond. So I just want to give you guys a big fat thank you for doing this work. Mr. Pate, you didn't have to do this at all. Like, I get your line of work, but I mean, to bring attention to that and to pick up on that guy's response was genius, and it was caring, and everybody, I promise you, every family in Kyle is going to appreciate it who has young kids. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
It's the story of how that guy got 68 people kicked out of Kyle. Councilmember Ellison, actually, Councilmember Tobias, including himself, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. Just real quick, again, Officer Pace, awesome job. Okay.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And Chief Barnett, thank you for the email that I sent the other day. You just nailed everything right there. You answered all the questions, especially when it came to the landlord's part. And so I just wanted to thank both of you guys. As a fellow officer myself, I mean, this is very important for our community. And I want to just give a big thanks to everybody who's pushing to get this done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Ellison.
Yes, I second everything that was said, and it's certainly I've known Officer Page for a long time, and I've seen the work that he's done in our city. So this is on various different aspects, including what many of our troubled youth, sometimes they're called, but I just youth that needs that attention and a little bit of guidance. And I've seen Officer Pates in action, seen him doing this for a long time. So to me, this is not a surprise that he would be proactive and do something like this. Just another example of our best and brightest and finest here on our cop police force. And so, Officer Pates, it's good to see you, my brother, and Happy New Year to you. And thank you for your hard work. It was a very comprehensive report. Thank you for compiling all that data and using your training and care for our community to bring this ordinance forward. Thank you, Chief, as well, and Sergeant Bone. Like I said, these are the things that makes me really proud of our law enforcement agency here in Kyle. And once again, just so happy to have y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may, real quick, I'm sorry to butt in there real quick. When this idea started rolling in my head, and I brought it to Sergeant Bone, and I brought it to Captain Hernandez and to Chief Barnett, they were all on board immediately. I mean, it was quick. It was probably a surprise why we didn't even have one at this point in time as well, for being a progressive city. So, from the command staff up, my supervisor, Sergeant Bone, to the chief, everybody was, yes, let's get it done. So thank you guys, and thank you, the council members, all of you guys, for y'all support on this.
So I'm going to take the other side. That'll be fun. I'm not actually on the other side, but there are some comments that I've heard in the community from family members of registered sex offenders that have valid things to say, believe it or not. People whose stories are not what you might think of in some kind of terrible movie or something, but rather something more like what you could see someone you may know falling into. But one question is really more for Paige, and it's to piggyback on what Councilmember Rizzo said. There's been litigation about whether sex offenders can have rights to live in a city, and whether a city can pass ordinances so restrictive that they're essentially expelled from the city, and therefore are we violating their constitutional rights because they are not prisoners, they are free citizens, but underneath this ordinance as well. Can you speak to that, and whether or not the map and or the policies in place are well founded in legal precedent as per Robert's question?
The litigation that I've seen hasn't been very successful. One of the cities where the court gave a pretty comprehensive opinion, we've used that as a kind of a model to build the ordinances. The ordinance that the city has used that you've got in front of you is built on that model. And then state law changed recently to allow general law cities the authority to adopt these types of ordinances. So that gives you additional authority to adopt an ordinance like this.
So you're saying you do feel comfortable that the ordinance being proposed is fully lawful, even considering the wide swath of the city that sex offenders will not be allowed to live in?
Well, if you've still got sufficient housing available, options to them, then that protects you from litigation.
Well, who determines that? Because the map is largely covered. But I'm not trying to go into the weeds. I'm just trying to get confirmation that you think this is appropriate. Cedar Park, you said, has passed something similar. We're in good standing here, so we're not going to have it kicked back.
Right. My review was of the ordinance, and so that's where I'm giving an opinion on the ordinance. The city of Longview was the one that also had. It's a different city that had the litigation that went through the Fifth Circuit that we modeled the ordinance on.
Okay. And nobody has any ill, pause or hesitation towards passing an ordinance that essentially expels sex offenders out of the city of Kyle from a constitutionality or a rights standpoint? Or we're going to say, let's just get them out of here. They have to live somewhere. They're going to go live somewhere.
I think the city of Kyle has enough places on the outs where it's not colored in that we're going to be okay. I mean, unless you want a large influx of people. I mean, he says it's only going to affect 60 of the 68 offenders that currently live in Kyle. So I'm pretty sure we have an extra 60 homes somewhere along these, the unmarked on the map. So I'm okay with that. Now, if we had, I think it'd be a red flag as well if we had 2,000 people we had to rehome. But luckily, we are being proactive, and as you state, it's only 60 people. So hopefully it doesn't cause a problem.
Well, 60 and growing, but so the spirit of the ordinance is to try to say we don't want sex offenders around schools or places where they might be interacting with tender age children, and we don't want to make sure they're not there. That's the spirit of in sensitive areas. The ordinance we're passing is not that. The ordinance we're passing that's 95% of every home in Kyle. Underneath that purple, underneath that. That's every major subdivision in the city of Kyle, because every subdivision has a park, subdivisions have schools. That's just the design of it. I can't even find a spot other than I-35 where registered sex offenders in the city of Kyle, after this is passed, would be able to live. And I just want to make sure we know that that's the reality, and are we okay making that sort of moral stance that regardless of circumstance, the overwhelming majority of sex offenders that live here are going to have to leave, and we're not going to allow them to live here because that's an expansive rule? Or is there a desire to tone it down to give them more opportunities to get further away, which I can't imagine that it is, but it's worth at least making sure that we know that this is a substantial policy that we're talking about passing here.
I guess for me, the only reservation I have is what I brought up earlier was, say there was a boy or a girl that was dating someone a couple of years younger, was a minor. The parents didn't really like the boy or the girl, and they, had them arrested. And they're a couple now. They've got kids. They've grown. They've got a family. They're raising a family here in Kyle, and now we're going to push them out. That's the only, I guess, the only concern I have, because sometimes parents just don't care for the boyfriend or the girlfriend, and it's out of spite like that they would have them arrested or something. I guess that's the only concern I'd have for someone like that.
Officer Pate, would they be someone who still has to register? Is that someone, even if they grew older and got married, would they still have to register or follow the service? I can't remember exactly how Chief Barnett worded it.
Right. If depending how their court, their trial goes, some people will have a lifetime registration where they'll have to register for life. Some will have a post-10, which means that 10 years after they're done with their probation, they don't have to register ever again in their life, as long as they don't, commit another crime. So it just depends on that situation. Depends on what their registration level is. Is it going to be lifetime or a post-10?
And I'm assuming that that's based on the severity of the crime.
Yes, ma'am. And to my knowledge, I can't think of any sex offenders that live in the city right now that meet that criteria.
I do hear these concerns that Councilmember Rizzo and Mayor Mitchell are presenting. I think that the situations are between the offender and the judge, ultimately, and not necessarily the city. And I think that it really just that would be if that were one of the offenders that we do have living here in Kyle right now, I feel like it would be a very small fraction of them who would, I guess, it would be the minority. Like you said, we have 60% that would fall under this ordinance. And so it just doesn't, to me, I would rather pass it rather than cater it to maybe that one person who does fall under the situation of maybe having a boyfriend or girlfriend a few years younger and then being forced to register as a sex offender.
I agree with Ashley. As a mother of a daughter whose boyfriend is 10 years older than her, and she is 25, she started dating, she's been with him for 10 years. I can understand the concern, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's still in the best interest of the population's health, safety, and general welfare of our citizens. And at the end of the day, I think that is what we want to do. We want to protect our citizens, and it's consequences, folks. Consequences. Like if you make a choice to date somebody who's 17 when you're 20, there are consequences. And so I agree with Ashley. I don't think we should not pass it because there is a small, I can't imagine out of the 60 people, there's going to be more than 5. So in a population of 50,000 plus, do we not pass an ordinance because of 5 people? Also, I'm also open to listening to any changes that people are willing to make in this ordinance. But if you don't have those changes and there's no input, then I'm going to go with what we have.
Any other thoughts? I wonder how much work it would be to see an option where perhaps we dialed down the perimeter slightly to see if we couldn't get the amount of our city covered from 90% down to 70% or 60, just to see if there's a tweak we can make where it might be possible that some portion of our city, at least, not near parks, not near schools, where it might still be possible, so that we wouldn't say, sorry, there's no place for you to live if you're a registered sex offender. That's a
Mayor, this is Chief Barnett. We can absolutely do that. We can both reduce the feet feet restriction on the properties, and then we could also look at some definitions and see if there's some really strongly worded outliers, and see if we maybe take those off the table as part of the definition, and perhaps that would give some footage back to the opportunity where they could live. So we could definitely get those maps from our GIS staff, and then work on tweaking a definition to give you some different options to look at.
Is that something the council would be
So,
interested
Chief,
in having them do, just so we can have a few options to look at when it's brought back?
So to look at reducing the square footage is what you're saying? And
Basically reducing it from
others-
1,500 feet to 1,000 feet
1,000
perhaps.
feet? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Ellison.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this, and it's going to be interesting to see those maps, because we have made it a point in our subdivisions for things like pocket parks to be within a 5-minute walk of every household. So I would think that that would preclude them from every pretty much subdivision. Apartment complexes have pools, parks within them, things like that. So so this is a proposal. This certainly isn't the ordinance in the first reading and different things. So I think we have time to kind of sift through these things and look. And I certainly appreciate staff willing to compile that information. I think it would be helpful to have. But it's going to be pretty interesting, like I said, because most of our dwelling that we approve in this city, we've made an emphasis on parks and open space, which I think would meet all the definitions that Chief and Officer Pates described earlier. So understand the tweaking of it, but still, I don't know. It's going to be very revealing, I think, where that would leave things particularly.
Anything else? There'll be more opportunity for us to talk about this. This is a good conversation for us to have. I'm glad we're not having to make a decision, because I have no idea how I feel about it. I'm between 1,000 and 1,500. I'm very much in agreement that the ordinance needs to come forward and support it from that standpoint. I have all these like pushback arguments I want to make, like what is the problem? Is a child more likely to be assaulted by a registered sex offender, or are they at more danger in their home? Statistically, I think there's a lot of domestic, violence and things like that happen as well. I just don't know if it's right for a child to feel safe or unsafe because 3 blocks down the road there's someone who 10 years ago was convicted of a crime that they have paid the consequences for and are trying to live there peacefully. I just don't know if those registered sex offenders are what we should be thinking of as threats, but I personally just don't want to make the decision because I don't know. It's super complicated, but I hate the idea of telling someone they're going to have to get out of their house in 3 months' time because of this. That really bothers me. Maybe they've lived here for 10 years. Sorry, you got to move now. I don't know. All right, well, err on the side of it's about the kids, right?
I was going to say, I don't know if I'd be as comfortable living next to a sex offender than hurting their feelings. You know what I mean? It's
a fair point. No, it's one
of those things like, and my heart goes out to some people who are in those bad situations. I get it. But again, why bend to the minority when all this ordinance wants to do is protect our children. We're not trying to create sex offenders. We're not trying to.
But communities go so far as in Halloween, making registered sex offenders plaster their door. It's like a scarlet A across. They put big signs out. There's no you get a bunch of of suburban families. I'm going to be careful what I say here, and they go after these people, and they feel assaulted, and there's like whole advocacy groups in defense of these folks. Like, I'm defending sex offenders, so let's move on. But I'm just telling you, those are all. That's everything I'm saying is real. It's hard for me to do.
You're making a valid point, because these people do have civil rights.
They do have rights.
They did serve their time. They are paying the price for it. And yes, Ms. Kale, you have brought up that's the consequences. But in the end, the courts sentence them to whatever years in prison or whatever it is, and whether it's a 10-year or a life registration, they have to go through that. But they are still, however you want to look at it, fortunately or unfortunately, still part of our society, still part of our city. And they work. They could be business owners for all you know. And they could be leading a perfectly normal life. But you have to look at the whole big picture, like what Mayor's saying. You got to be real careful on these things. Somebody who could be contributing to the city and to society by making a bad mistake and a horrible mistake years ago, they're feeling like you said, hey, if we pass this 3 months later, you got to move, you got to leave.
But what about those that reoffend? And what's the difference in that?
What are those stats on those? I understand.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know the stats on that, but I'd rather err on the side of safety than to.
That's true.
And look, I understand. My heart goes out to certain situations, but again, not at the cost of my kids' safety. We have to feel safe in our city and in our homes, and that's hard to do. If we have a sex offender, I'm not going to sit here and ask him about his past. I'm sorry, you have to register as a sex offender. I shouldn't have to come ask you about your past to figure out how safe I am in my own home.
That's a good spot to end it, I think. You're going to give us a couple different maps and options, Chief, you said?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks again, Dago. Thank you all. Good discussion.
Guys.
So I put it at the end just because of the content. I hope you know. I didn't mean to make you wait here until the end. Well, that's part of it.
Good.
All right. Anything else before we move on?
Thank you for your hard work. I appreciate it. Your due diligence. Thank you.
We'll bring it back for first reading at the next meeting. There's nothing that I'm hearing that says we should delay it. So. Also, now that we have our full 7 back, can we bring agenda item number 20 back up and revote? Because I think that one went 6-0. We'd like to go 7-0.
Correct.
Yeah, got reasons for it, I suppose. So I'd like to motion to reconsider agenda item number 20.
Second.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item number 20, an ordinance amending City of Kyle, Texas fee schedule. Councilmember Ellison.
I'd like to approve the agenda item as written. Motion to approve the agenda item as written.
It's been moved by Councilmember Ellison, seconded by Councilmember Bradshaw. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Any objection to this item being finally passed? Seeing none, City Manager's report.
Thank you. Great. Mayor, Council, Scott Sellers for the record. Just run through the report here. As you know, we've had our curative van out at the Performing Arts Center that is still there. We've had a lot of requests from citizens about the vaccine. As you see, Hays County is a designated COVID-19 vaccine hub. As soon as they get the vaccines in, they send out a text alert and they get overwhelmed by calls and on the online portals. So they're working on addressing that on their end. We've had some traffic issues up at the testing site as well, and they're working to resolve that also. But as quickly as they get those vaccines in, they're trying to get that word out and get people signed up for those. We do have a couple of mass food distribution events up on the horizon. The ACC campus worked well for that last time, so we'll continue that location. February 13th and March 13th from 9 till noon. Again, volunteers are needed, and you can get online and register to volunteer. City offices are closed for President's Day, Monday, February 15th. This has been discussed several times tonight, but this month is Black History Month. We have the Dialogue for Peace and Progress coming up February 5th from 7 to 8, and you can get online to find more details about that.
8:30.
8:30, thank you. And then I did send out a budget calendar to the City Council. Really just wanted to make sure that you all had a chance to look at that. If you had any questions or concerns about the timeline, we did add an extra work session this year for the budget calendar, but that will begin with our visioning workshop. And as you can see, the dates here for the various work sessions through the second reading of the budget ordinance and property tax ordinance. So if there are questions, please let me know now. Otherwise, we will solidify those dates and publish that officially in the budget calendar. I see nods, thumbs up, perfect. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, executive session.
Pursuant to Chapter 551 Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary. During this meeting, the City Council may convene an executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all the following topics: city lights in Kyle Marketplace subdivision/development and planned unit development zoning.
There's no action taken during executive session. There will be no action taken now. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by the mayor, second by Councilmember Bradshaw. All those in, hey Dex, where'd you go? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Let me see a hand, Dex.
Aye.
There we go.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 4-0.